Chapter 2554. The space in the ninth region was chaotic. One step could take them more than 10 kilometers away, and another step could take them back. If they were strong enough, they could directly break through the formation. When their strength reached a certain level, there was no need to care about the rules at all. It was like the strong could do whatever they wanted. But now they were not as strong as immortal King Hefeng, so they could only follow the rules Hefeng had set back then. They kept trying, and with Wally's analytical ability, they finally arrived at the end of the ninth region, after more than a month. The stone tablet was already very close. Let's begin. Hirunhai said, his tone somewhat excited. Once this formation I was activated, they could open the door to the treasure vault. There was everything he dreamed of. But everyone's expression was solemn. At this time, whoever had ulterior motives was about to show their true colors. But at this stage, there was naturally no reason to retreat. They all cut their fingers and smeared their blood on it. Boom! The ninth pillar of light soared into the sky. The 9 pillars of light fused and became an even thicker pillar of light, breaking through the sky. Looking up, they saw the clouds in the sky revolving around the pillar of light. It was extremely gloomy, as if some terrifying monster was about to run out from within. Clang, clang, clang. There was the sound of chains, as if some mechanism had been triggered. Huh! They looked to the left and right, only to see chains dancing in the sky, intertwining to form a large tree. Xiao! A chain attacked them like a spirit snake. Hirunhai seemed to have expected it. He waved his hand, and an immortal king was thrown out by him. The chain immediately penetrated his body and tightly wrapped around him. Ah! Under the intense pain, the immortal king woke up. He roared and spat out blood, but his body was rapidly drying up, as if he had suddenly lost all his blood. Ling Han and the others were greatly shocked, but they also had a feeling that this was within their expectations. They had always felt that Hirunhai must have some other plan. How could a ninth heaven immortal king be so easy to deal with? Now that his plan was revealed, he revealed his ferocious side. Clang! The metal chain carried that celestial king into the air. At the same time, there were 8 other metal chains that carried a human body from different directions. Lu Hao, Luo Yangqiu, Su Huan, and Ji Zhihong were among them. These were the people who had been left behind to guard the stone tablets in the 8 regions. Hirunhai, what is the meaning of this? The Imperial Void Immortal King coldly asked. Although he had reached an agreement with Xiaoying Xiong and the others, he wouldn't care about the life or death of these people. But now that this matter implicated him, he naturally had to act. Hirunhai stood with his hands clasped behind his back, appearing to not care at all. If no one is sacrificed, how can there be any gains? Such a simple truth, I'm sure everyone knows it. You even dare to touch the people of the number 1 martial institution under the heavens? You are truly audacious. Gu Hui's calm expression changed as he reprimanded Hirunhai. Hirunhai smiled calmly and said, without the sacrifice of these people, the origin return to 1 fruit wouldn't have been able to ripen. Everyone, which one is more important? Have you considered it carefully? He paused for a moment, and then continued. Those who don't want this supreme Dao fruit can leave immediately. I definitely won't stop you. However, by the time you report this to the higher-ups of the martial institution, I will have already changed my identity and disappeared in the vast sea of people. Or do you want to collect the celestial fruit together with me? The large black dog laughed loudly and said, if you ask a tiger for its skin, you will only suffer the consequences of your own actions. Hirunhai, you'd better obediently restrain yourself. Wait! The Imperial Void Immortal King waved his hand and stopped the large black dog. Imperial Void, what do you mean by this? Could it be that you really want to cooperate with this guy? The large black dog stared at the Imperial Void Immortal King, and his heart tightened. If the 2 Ninth Firmament Immortal Kings were to join forces against it, it would have no choice but to retreat. As expected, Brother Imperial Void is decisive. Hirunhai laughed loudly and said, we cultivators only have one goal, and that is to reach the peak of martial art. For this goal, I can even sacrifice my own son. What more an outsider? Hearing this, everyone felt a chill in their hearts and thought, it's really unfortunate to be your son. This was an ambitious and ruthless person, and for the sake of achieving his goal, he would use any means at all, disregarding sacrifices. Though the Imperial Void Immortal King didn't necessarily agree with his point of view, Lu Hao and the others didn't have the slightest relationship with him. So he didn't care at all, and naturally couldn't be bothered to refute. What he wanted was only the origin returned to one fruit. Xiaoxiong and the others all wore grave expressions. The Imperial Void Immortal King's stance put them in an extremely difficult position. If they chose not to cooperate with him, then it was extremely likely that they would be killed by the Imperial Void Immortal King. But even if they agreed, this would violate a great taboo of the martial institution. So how could the Imperial Void Immortal King let them off easily? Xiao, Lu Yufei suddenly dashed out, and as her figure flashed, she took the lead and entered the center of this great formation. At first this was solid ground, but as the chains turned into giant trees, the middle area also underwent a huge change. They could pass through, and wouldn't be affected in the slightest. Origin returned to one fruit. Everyone exclaimed in shock. Lu Yufei had definitely gone for the celestial fruit. They definitely couldn't allow her to monopolize it. Everyone hurriedly chased after her. Though Lu Yufei had previously said that there was more than one origin returned to one fruit, could the words of this master and disciple be trusted? Lu Hao and the others were the best counterexample. Even the Imperial Void Immortal King couldn't restrain himself, and immediately chased after them. Why aren't you all chasing after them? He Runhai asked, staring at Ling Han and the others. Ling Han, the Empress, Wally, and the large black dog didn't move. The large black dog grinned, revealing 2 rows of sharp teeth. You aren't even chasing after them. So what are we in a hurry for? He Runhai laughed loudly. Do you all think that you are very smart? Surnamed he. What exactly do you have up your sleeves? Ling Han asked loudly. A mere third heaven celestial king dares to act arrogantly in front of me? He Runhai's previous modesty was gone, and he became proud and aloof. Just now, those people are already rushing to their deaths. Though you all are slightly smarter, you will only die a little later. True enough, his true intentions were revealed, and he couldn't help but reveal his true colors. Old brat in front of Grandpa Dog, do you think you can do anything? The large black dog attacked, wanting to capture He Runhai. He Runhai didn't dodge, and just continued to attack. However, when the large black dog's paw swept past, He Runhai's figure shuddered, and slowly became transparent. In the end he disappeared, and only his arrogant laughter remained. Ling Han, the Empress, and the large black dog's expressions all changed. This He Runhai had already slipped away at some point, and only left behind a wisp of his divine sense here. No wonder he didn't fear the large black dog at all. That was because his true body wasn't here at all. When did he steal the beam and replace the pillar? Ling Han asked with a frown. Wally, did you notice? The large black dog asked. Wally shook his head. He also appeared very surprised. Firstly, I didn't keep an eye on him. Secondly, he didn't notice any strange fluctuations either. Then should we advance or retreat? Chapter 2556. A Beautiful Romance. Lord Ancestor. Even though Xiaoxiong and the others were only weak and hadn't lost consciousness, their hearts trembled when they heard this. Immortal King Hefeng. Was Immortal King Hefeng still alive? Lord Ancestor, stop pretending. He Runhai sneered. You've been planning for countless years, so that if you failed to become an Empyrean, you could still have a way out. Do you think you're the only smart one? What do you mean? An ancient voice rang out, directly entering everyone's minds. This was a divine sense transmission, and the one who sent this divine sense was the Iron Tree. Do you think I don't know? He Runhai said disdainfully. When you failed to become an Empyrean, your body was destroyed, and your soul was targeted by heaven and earth. You could only hide under this 9-star grand formation and struggle at death's door. Your plan was to use an immortal tree as a seed, nurture it for several epochs, and then attract the He family's descendants to pour their essence blood into it, giving you a chance to be resurrected. Unfortunately, I've seen through your scheme a long time ago. I beat you at your own game. I released news of the ancient site to attract these idiots and break this grand formation. I let you think the time is ripe, and your soul will come out of the grand formation to nurture the Tao tree. With the Tao fruit as a body, you will be reborn and even reach a higher level. Unfortunately, these people don't have the He family's bloodline and can't be used by you. The Tao fruit can be formed, but you can't use it to be reborn. It will only help me. Haha. With the soul of a quasi-Empyrean as the core and the essence blood of many super-emperor stars and immortal kings, how amazing will the Tao fruit be? I will surpass you and become a true Empyrean. Ancestor, you've already passed away. You should continue to be buried here, and let your descendants live a glorious life. He continued to ramble on, causing everyone to be shocked. It turned out that they had obtained clues about immortal king He Feng's ancient site, because of He Ruanhai's plan. He had discovered that the time was ripe, so he released the news to attract them. Sure enough, even Super Emperor stars were moved by the treasures of a quasi-Empyrean, and walked right into the trap. This fellow was truly vicious and merciless. Not only had he schemed against them, but even their own ancestors had become his sacrificial pawns. Previously, He Runhai had said that in order to rush to the peak of martial art, he was even willing to sacrifice his own son. Thinking about it this way, what was the big deal if he also tricked his ancestor? Unfilial descendant, unfilial descendant. Tai Shu's thoughts were filled with rage. Clang! All the chains suddenly changed direction and pierced towards the top of the tree. Ancestor, since I've already said this, do you really think I won't be prepared? Sneered He Runhai. He took out a white stone and pressed it down lightly. Instantly, the stone began to shine. Clang! 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 All the chains turned around once more, piercing through the bodies of Ji Wuming and the others and hanging them up. Imperial Void Immortal King was free, just about to run. But before he could escape, those chains came again, releasing fierce attacks. Ha 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 ha, I didn't follow the ancestors' instructions. What's there to not enter before the deadline? He Runhai laughed loudly. I've entered this place countless times, and I've long since understood the situation here. I've long since controlled the core of this formation. Ancestor, the one in charge here is not you, but me. So what if you were once a quasi-celestial paragon? Now you're just a remnant soul, so how can you defeat me? He Runhai suddenly pointed at Ling Han and the others. I've told you before, you can only struggle at death's door. Now that the outcome has been determined, you can all die obediently. He gripped the stone in his hand as if he was commanding it. Clang! Clang! Immediately, a dozen or so chains shot towards Ling Han and the others. The large black dog roared angrily and immediately charged forward. His figure flashed, and every time he flashed, he would advance a great distance as he closed in on He Runhai. If they didn't get rid of He Runhai, or seize the control core in his hands, then they would forever be beaten. However, the closer they got to Tai Shu, the shorter the distance the large black dog could teleport. In fact, he could only teleport 10 to 15 meters at a time. It was as if he had sunk into mud, and it was difficult for him to move. Ha ha ha. He Runhai laughed loudly. This is a formation set up by a quasi-celestial paragon. You're just a ninth heaven celestial king. So what if you're a super emperor star? There's no way you can break through it. As he spoke, the dozen or so chains had already shot towards the large black dog. Clang! Meanwhile, Ling Han and the others retreated. However, they discovered that the attack range of the chains was actually limited, and they couldn't reach the place they were originally at. In other words, if the large black dog didn't take the initiative to attack, the chains couldn't do anything to him. Not good, we've fallen for this guy's trap again, Ling Han said in a low voice. He Runhai had intentionally revealed the secret, and was extremely arrogant. It wasn't that he was too proud of himself, but rather that he was putting on an act to confuse them. As expected, the large black dog had fallen for his trap. Unfortunately, you've awakened too late. He Runhai flew down from the Tai Shu. Now 2 ninth heaven celestial kings were trapped by the chains, and the remaining 3 celestial kings were weak. He could easily deal with them. Wally was a little strange, but his battle prowess was too weak. He didn't need to kill him at all. He only needed to suppress him. He Runhai walked very slowly, but his aura was very ostentatious, giving Ling Han and the others a terrifying pressure. This was a ninth heaven celestial king, and to be able to reach such a height meant that he was a monarch himself. Naturally, he was extremely terrifying. Ling Han and the others retreated slowly, but Runhai was still not in a hurry, and continued to advance slowly. After a long while, Runhai finally laughed loudly. You guys should be out of ideas. He was an extremely cautious person. Even in such a situation, he still didn't let his guard down. Instead, he wanted to completely confirm the situation before finally deciding that victory was within his grasp. Obediently lie down for me. Runhai stretched out his palm, which was densely covered with seals. Old man, you've fallen for my trap as well. Xiao. A black figure leaped out from Ling Han's body, rapidly growing larger as it charged towards Runhai. It was actually the large black dog. What was going on? Wasn't the large black dog already trapped? Haha. If I let an old brat like you find out, wouldn't Grandpa Dog have lived here for nothing? The large black dog laughed loudly. He unleashed his techniques, attacking Runhai madly. At this distance, the chains could not reach him, so Runhai could only fight alone. Runhai had attacked because he was certain that victory was already within his grasp. Who would have thought that there would actually be another large black dog? You impersonated a strand of divine sense for us, thinking that we wouldn't be able to give you a taste of your own medicine? Ling Han said slowly from the side. Impossible. Runhai still didn't believe it. If it was just a strand of divine sense, how could it be a match for those chains? Don't be so surprised. What kind of person is Grandpa Dog? How could he be someone that you can figure out? The large black dog said proudly. This was the plan that they had come up with previously, and it was mainly Ling Han who had come up with it. Wally was responsible for making the large black dog's divine sense as close to the real thing as possible, while the large black dog's true body was hidden in Ling Han's spatial god tool, and he was responsible for the final battle. Now that the large black dog had taken all the credit for this, Wally naturally felt that it was shameful. Reading on a phone is more refreshing. Chapter 2557. Runhai was extremely displeased. He had prided himself on his unparalleled intelligence. He had even seen through the scheme of the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier ancestor, and used him to help him achieve his Dao fruit. But now he had actually been schemed against by someone else. This naturally caused him to fly into a rage out of humiliation. His intelligence had been destroyed. This was far too humiliating. However, the large black dog had already charged over, and he had no time to think. He had to use his full power to deal with him. In a battle of the same cultivation level, a super emperor star could easily crush a monarch tier. The metal chains that filled the sky were flying, yet they couldn't reach this area at all. So they couldn't help Runhai at all. I'll beat you to death, you old geezer. The large black dog used his full power. He stood on his hind legs and waved his claws, shooting out bursts of black light that tore through space and shook the galaxy. Runhai had no intention of fighting the large black dog head-on. He only wanted to break through. As long as he returned to the range of the iron tree's tentacles, he would be invincible unless another pseudo-heavenly venerable came. He was determined to break through, but there was a gap of 2 evolution levels, which was equivalent to a large gap between their cultivation levels. His desire to break through could not be realized. You dared to trick your Grandpa Dog. The large black dog exploded in anger. It had always been him who schemed against others, but now, he was being schemed against by someone else. This caused him to feel an indescribable fury. Runhai didn't answer. He waved his celestial saber, wanting to charge out in a single blow. However, Ling Han had also handed the divine demon sword to the large black dog in advance. Celestial tools against celestial tools. The divine demon sword had been fused with a great deal of divine metal, and in terms of toughness and sharpness, it was far superior to ordinary celestial tools. In a head-on clash, Runhai's celestial saber was suppressed by the divine demon sword, and his own battle prowess was inferior to the large black dog, so he appeared to be in an even more difficult situation. Damn it! Damn it! Runhai roared loudly. Everything had been clearly under his control, yet the sudden change in the situation caused him to suddenly fall into a swamp. Unfilial descendant, give up your control of the black gold tree. And I can save you, the iron tree said. It was pseudo-heavenly venerable He Feng. Runhai didn't reply. The reason why he could be so sure of victory was because he grasped the black gold tree, and the core was the white stone in his hand. This was the control pivot. He never trusted anyone but himself. Previously, he had expressed his thoughts of deceiving his master. Once he let go of his control over the black gold tree, he would no longer be able to hold He Feng hostage. At that time, a quasi-heavenly venerable might even become a true Empyrean in a single leap. At that time, destroying him would be as easy as flipping his palm. He didn't believe that He Feng would spare him, because of their bloodline. If it was him, he would definitely kill the other party, and make them suffer countless tortures, even if it was his own son. Not only did he not intend to hand over the control hub, but he also kept the white stone, and focused on breaking out of the encirclement. Do you really think that I don't have a way? He sneered. As a ninth firmament immortal king, how could he be an ordinary person? How could he not have a trump card? He let out a long roar, and a strange fluctuation rippled out. His battle prowess had obviously soared. Previously, it was said that as long as the difference in cultivation level wasn't great, a celestial king couldn't be stopped if he wanted to break out of the encirclement. The large black dog was indeed 2 ranks higher than Runhai. But if one considered the difference in cultivation level, then even a single cultivation level was barely enough. With Runhai's explosive power, the large black dog was a bit unable to stop him. Fuck your grandma. Do you think that grandpa dog won't flip out? The large black dog roared in anger, and also used a secret technique. Multiple seals flickered on his body, and his battle prowess also soared. The two of them battled, and the large black dog just barely managed to stop Runhai. Ling Han and the Empress also moved. Though there was a huge gap between their battle prowess and the ninth firmament, their offensive power couldn't be underestimated, either. What celestial king would dare say that they could casually attack him? They were only responsible for restraining Runhai, and not allowing him to break through and return to the area of the iron tree. You can't stop me. Runhai roared. He charged forward without any regard for anything. Pung! He was slashed by the large black dog's paw, and one of his arms was instantly severed. Meanwhile, the attacks of Ling Han and the Empress had also left deep wounds on his body. However, he charged out of the large black dog's encirclement, moving as fast as lightning. Stop for Grandpa Dog. The large black dog used spatial teleportation, wanting to stop Runhai. Runhai's body and saber became one, and his speed suddenly increased explosively. Wah! He spat out a mouthful of celestial king blood, but rushed out before the large black dog could successfully stop him. He was like a flash of light, and shot into the area of the iron tree. The large black dog suddenly stopped. He couldn't advance any further, or it would be his turn to be beaten up if he entered into the area of the iron tree. Runhai stopped, incredibly paused. He had lost an arm, and there were also 2 wounds on his abdomen. Celestial king blood flowed continuously, but as long as he didn't die, this kind of injury was a small matter. He would be able to heal eventually. He looked menacingly at the large black dog, Ling Han, and the Empress, and enunciated each word clearly. When I consume the origin return to 1 fruit, and take that crucial step, it will be the day you all die. Hey, Grandpa Dog doesn't want to play with you anymore. I'm leaving. The large black dog deliberately turned around, and gave Runhai a backside. His iron underwear reflected light, and could be blinded by it. Runhai was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood again. He sped up his arm, and allowed the wounds on his abdomen to heal. On the surface he looked fine, but only he knew how serious his internal injuries were. But it didn't matter. In this area, he was an invincible king. You can't escape, he said coldly. The path has been sealed, and you don't have enough Super Emperor Star living blood. So how can you open the door? You are just turtles in a jar. He didn't care anymore. As long as he suppressed the Imperial Void Celestial King, and extracted his blood essence, the origin return to 1 fruit would ripen, and he would pluck the fruit and consume it, and then break through to the pseudo-celestial tier. At that time, he would be invincible. The Imperial Void Celestial King didn't last for long either. He was indeed strong, but he wasn't strong enough to fight against thousands or tens of thousands of celestial kings of the same level and still be able to break through. In the end, he was suppressed, and his entire body was wrapped in iron chains, and one of them directly pierced through his chest, extracting his blood essence. The Imperial Void Celestial King roared in fury. To think that he was a close to invincible existence in the celestial realm, but in the Flame Frost plane, not only did he have to lower his head and act carefully, but now he was even about to have his blood essence extracted, and death seemed to be imminent. How could he be willing? Xiaoing Xiong Ji Wuming, and the others were all groaning. Their blood essence was continuously flowing out, and they became incredibly weak. He Runhai laughed loudly. Though there had been a small mistake, he had finally returned to the right track, and everything was under his control. Ling Han's brows were tightly furrowed. Should he use the Dimension Scroll and summon the Heavenly Tribulation? But if that happened, it would be difficult for him to escape. He couldn't help but think of the question he had asked Wally previously, and had been asked by Wally in return. If the enemy captured his lover to threaten him, how should he choose? Though the Empress wasn't in He Ruinhai's hands now, the situation was similar. He immediately firmed his conviction. For the sake of his lover, he could sacrifice himself. Sigh. But right at this moment, a leisurely voice suddenly rang out. It was still He Feng. What else did he want to say? Did he think that He Runhai would listen? Unfilial descendant, do you really think that everything is under your control? Chapter 2558. A Beautiful Romance. He Runhai was shocked at first, but he immediately sneered. That was natural. He controlled the core of the formation, so the outcome was already set. Old ancestor, you don't need to put up any pointless resistance. Fine, it's time for me to use your soul as a core to condense my Dao fruit, he said indifferently. The Taishu had already extracted enough essence blood, so it was time to complete the final step. This energy-returning fruit was not a natural celestial fruit, but a man-made one. Rather than saying it was a celestial fruit, it was more like a special alchemy technique. Harvesting the soul of a quasi-celestial venerable, along with the accumulation of countless years, it finally became a peerless pill. Of course, everything before was a lie. There was only one energy-returning fruit, and only celestial kings at the peak of the ninth heaven could use it to become a quasi-celestial venerable. He took out the white stone, wanting to extract Celestial King He Feng's soul. But as soon as he activated it, his expression changed. It didn't move. How was this possible? He clearly controlled the core of the formation, and He Feng was only left with a remnant soul. How could he not do anything? Ha! He Feng let out a long sigh. You have indeed misunderstood me. This was originally a great stroke of good fortune for the He family's descendants. It could help you take the most critical step and step into the ranks of quasi-empyreans. Unfortunately, you are selfish and never trust others. You are too clever for your own good. He Ruinhai's expression was fierce as he said loudly. So what? I have full control of the situation now. Since you are wholeheartedly doing this for the descendant, then obediently use your soul as the core and let the Dao fruit grow. Celestial King He Feng smiled. Why would the energy-returning fruit need my soul to mature? You are wrong. Wrong from the very beginning. Nonsense, nonsense. He Runhai scolded. He desperately activated the white stone, wanting to extract He Feng's soul from the center of the formation and complete the most crucial setup. Wang, a ray of light lit up from the center of the formation, and then a figure appeared. It was formed from countless rays of light, and it was difficult to see its face. Even its figure was indistinct. How did you escape? He Runhai turned pale with fright, as if he had seen a ghost. Because this figure was the ancestor of the He family, He Feng. The bloodline connection allowed him to immediately determine that the other party was He Feng, his ancestor. But it was also because of this that he was extremely shocked. How could He Feng appear? He was only a remnant soul, and only by hiding in the formation could he avoid being discovered and targeted by heaven and earth. But now he had actually escaped. This was something impossible. Otherwise, why would this old ancestor have planned for several epochs? Wasn't it precisely to let the essence return to one fruit ripen? Who told you that I'm trapped here? Yifeng said indifferently, but there was an indescribable domineeringness to his words. You're not stuck here. What are you doing here? Is it fun? Yifeng waved his hand. The metal tree emitted qingqiang sounds. Pa, pa, pa. Immortal King Imperial Void, and the others were all flung out. All of them barely managed to stand up, their faces deathly pale. All of them had lost a large amount of blood essence, their vitality suffering a great loss. But he didn't die. That was good. Runhai couldn't help but roar. You're crazy. They're all nourishment. Didn't you plan for so long just to extract their essence blood to nourish the essence returned to one fruit, so that you can be reborn? I've already told you before that this essence returned to one fruit was actually prepared for my descendants. But your actions have disappointed me. Should I still leave it for you? Asked Yifeng. Runhai didn't believe it. How could there be such a good person in this world? He would give up his chance to be reborn, just to benefit his descendants. Ling Han interrupted. Senior, could it be that you succeeded in breaking through to the Empyrean realm back then? He had succeeded, but he had also suffered heavy injuries and needed countless years to recuperate. At the same time, he had also set up a trap to create a great opportunity for his descendants. It was just that the He family seemed to have a bad habit of being overly suspicious. If he had clearly explained the situation, there definitely wouldn't have been so many problems. But he just had to test the loyalty of his descendants. Runhai was also the kind of person who would even sacrifice his own son. In the end, there was a problem. Who was to blame? Yifeng faltered and then laughed. You're quite smart, brat. Unfortunately, you're not my descendant. What a pity, what a pity. How is this possible? Runhai cried out involuntarily. Since you succeeded in breaking through to the Empyrean realm, why did you bury yourself here? You lied to me. You must have lied to me. Yifeng's figure slowly became more solid, and his facial features also became clearer. His appearance could now be distinguished. He appeared to be in his 20s, but he was full of heroic spirit and was filled with an indescribable pressure. Empyrean, the large black dog exclaimed. He had followed the Empyrean of origin born for countless years, so he was naturally very familiar with the aura of an Empyrean. This was an Empyrean, a genuine one. Yifeng clasped his hands behind his back and said, Back then I had indeed succeeded, and truly pushed open the door to the Empyrean realm. However, I knew my own limits. Being able to become an Empyrean was already, because I was in a super high-level plane, and the regulations here were closer to the essence of power. However, if I wanted to take another step forward and touch the essence of power of the origin world, that was an impossible thing. The first step of becoming an Empyrean was to grasp the unique power of a plane. This was not true transcendence, because if one went to another plane, they would need to once again grasp that unique power. Only then would they be able to possess the strength of an Empyrean again. Only by becoming a second-step Empyrean, and truly grasping one of the 6 great essence powers of the origin world, would they be able to look down on heaven and earth, and travel through any plane. Thus, I thought, since frenzy can swallow the heavens and devour the earth, and even surpass the limit of a 7th-step Empyrean, then why can't I? Yifeng said calmly. His tone was very calm, but the meaning behind his words caused everyone's hearts to tremble. That's right. I purposely destroyed my physical body. During this long period of time, I have been fusing with this thing. Behind him, there was shockingly an additional tail. Having a tail was not something strange. There were many half-humans in this world, and long horns, long tails, and long tails were all very common. However, Yifeng's tail was wrapped with a black light, and emitted an indescribable pressure. This time, Ling Han was really shocked, and he even revealed a look of anger. This is Frenzy's tentacle. He had seen it in the immortal region plane. Back then, Zhou Heng had crossed planes, and in the end Frenzy had followed him. One attack had nearly killed Empyrean Greenfire, and what Ling Han and the others had found was something that looked like an octopus tentacle. Ling Han had a very deep memory of Yifeng's tail. It was Frenzy's tentacle. Yifeng was slightly taken aback, and he could not help but say, a mere 3rd firmament celestial king has actually seen Frenzy? It had to be known that even peak ninth firmament celestial kings could only play the role of cannon fodder when they went to the outer realm battlefield. They could die at any time. It was hard to imagine that Ling Han had seen frenzy before. Ling Han nodded. Yes, Yifeng chuckled. It doesn't matter. I am willing to tell you all this, so I have no intention of keeping it a secret. That's right, I have fused with frenzy's tentacle, and I have been fusing with it for so many years. Next I will go to a low-level plane, kill all the experts there, and then devour that plane. I believe that in the future, I will definitely become the second frenzy. Really crazy. Chapter 2560. Many thanks, Senior. Everyone bowed towards the black donkey. Otherwise, Yifeng could have easily silenced them, and then left. A celestial sovereign was such a powerful existence. Senior, aren't you afraid that Yifeng will harm you if you let him go just like that? Xiaoying Xiong asked. The black donkey chuckled. That old guy is already at his limit after becoming a heavenly venerable. He can't possibly become a second step heavenly venerable. Devouring a plane with such strength is really a joke. It paused. Compared to frenzy, he's just trash. Everyone clenched their teeth in their hearts. This black donkey should only be a first step heavenly venerable. But he was so arrogant. It really made them speechless. However, this essence returning fruit is real. If you eat it, your strength will increase, the black donkey continued. Everyone's faces twitched as they looked at the fruit in their hands. This thing grew from an iron tree. Could it really be eaten? Hurry up. The celestial fruit has already been cut open, and a portion of its essence will be lost every moment, the black donkey shouted. Everyone hurriedly ate their portion, including Vale. He wasn't human, but that didn't mean he couldn't digest the benefits of the celestial fruit. They sat down cross-legged, and only the large black dog, an imperial void celestial king, stood there bored. The large black dog's eyes darted around, and he suddenly jogged over to the black donkey's side, starting to get close to it. One was a dog, and the other was a donkey, but they very quickly started talking and laughing. They even put their arms around each other's shoulders, as if they were good friends. Ling Han's feeling was not wrong. As the saying went, birds of a feather flocked together. The fact that Erhe and Erhe were so close to each other meant that they clearly had a common language. However, Ling Han didn't have time to care about this now. He was refining the essence returning fruit. Putting aside the fact that this fruit needed to extract the blood essence of a celestial king emperor star, just the fact that it had grown for a few epochs was enough to show its extraordinariness. According to Yifeng, if this fruit fully matured, it could allow a ninth heaven celestial king to directly become a quasi-heavenly venerable. Although the effects were slightly weaker now, and it had been divided into many pieces, it was still a rare treasure for low-level celestial kings. This was not a pure immortal fruit but a type of pill. Of course, this kind of concoction method was also very difficult to imitate. As soon as Ling Han circulated the medicinal effects, he discovered that not only could it push his cultivation level forward, it could also push the indestructible heaven scroll to a higher level. However, there was only one immortal fruit. If he cared about his cultivation, he couldn't care about his physique. Which one to choose? Ling Han only hesitated slightly before deciding to cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll first. Innate, Wally's physique and recovery ability had touched him greatly. Previously, this was something that belonged to him. But now, he could only watch helplessly as others had such abilities. This made him very anxious. He circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, crazily absorbing the benefits of the origin return to one fruit. Multiple symbols flickered on the surface of his body, as if they were explaining the secrets of the ancient heavens. This immortal fruit required several epochs to grow, and it contained an incomparably rich amount of energy. Ling Han spent a total of 39 days to completely refine it. He was somewhat regretful but also somewhat happy. When the indestructible heaven scroll was cultivated to the celestial king tier, there were a total of 9 levels, known as the indestructible celestial king body. Each level corresponded to a heaven of the celestial king tier. For example, one level of the indestructible celestial king tier was equivalent to the full defense of a first heaven celestial king tier. However, the advantage of the indestructible heaven scroll was that it cultivated physique, and physique was permanent. He had now advanced the indestructible celestial king tier to the 6th level, which was quite extraordinary, but still a bit away from the peak stage of the 9th level. Moreover, the advancement of the indestructible heaven scroll was not affected by cultivation level. As long as Ling Han's comprehension ability was strong enough, and he had enough resources, he could completely advance the indestructible celestial king tier to the next level, reaching the eternal celestial gold body, and his physical body would truly be comparable to celestial gold. There was still one more level, which was also the final level, and that was the indestructible heavenly venerable body. However, the heavenly venerable Fateborn had only cultivated half a level, and though his physical body was stronger than celestial gold, it was not at the level of the full defense of a first-step heavenly venerable. It couldn't be helped. The heavenly venerable Fateborn died early, or he might have long since perfected this cultivation technique. My recovery ability has also greatly improved. The indestructible true fluid has now turned into mist, filling every part of my body, and I can automatically recover no matter how serious my injuries are. However, the ability of rising from the ashes can't be used for the time being. This involved the level of regulations, but this was the fiery frost plane, and the cultivation technique needed to be adjusted to conform to the great Tao here. Moreover, the level of regulations can only be applied to celestial kings. If I break through to heavenly venerable tier, then rising from the ashes will be completely ineffective. Celestial kings were favored by the heaven and earth, so there might be a sliver of a chance for rebirth, but heavenly venerables definitely couldn't. If they died, they would really die. Moreover, my evolution index seems to have increased a little again. Ling Han murmured. Previously, he was infinitely close to 12, but now he felt that he had already taken this step. Because his cultivation level didn't increase in the slightest, but his battle prowess increased a lot, and this could only be explained in terms of the level of evolution. Ling Han was the first to complete the refinement. Following him, Fire Hibiscus, Ji Wuming, and the others also stopped. Vale was the slowest, but he was also the most indifferent. His body could digest the benefits on its own. Since you're all done then scram. The black donkey moved, and after tearing open the space, he kicked everyone in one by one. Then he stepped in himself. Xiao, the space recovered, and this place immediately returned to its original state. Everyone shuttled through the void, and very soon, they all fell out. As expected, they had already returned to the number 1 martial institution under the heavens. Scram, scram. The black donkey impatiently fanned its hooves, actually daring to make this venerable one wait for so many days. What a bunch of troublesome little brats. That little doll, you will also be a member of the martial institution in the future. These words were directed at Lu Yufei. Lu Yufei was instantly overjoyed. Actually, she had also tricked Ling Han and the others, and was just worried whether they would settle the score with her later. But now that she had become a student of the number 1 martial institution under the heavens, her life would be guaranteed. Humph! The Imperial Void Immortal King waved his sleeves, and was the first to leave. He was far too displeased. Although the others had been injured, and had suffered, they had at least obtained benefits. What about him? Not only had he suffered a great loss of vitality, but the ancient bell had also lost a great deal of its essence. This trip was practically a huge loss for him. He turned to look at Ling Han, killing intent pulsing in his eyes. He definitely had to get rid of this young man, but not now. The Imperial Void Immortal King let out a battle cry, and quickly left. Xiaoing Xiong and the others also left one after another. Although they had suffered a great disaster previously, they had obtained great benefits in the end. Everyone's cultivation level had skyrocketed, and they only needed to accumulate a little, and they would be able to break through. Moreover, after breaking through, they would be able to maintain the rapid growth of their cultivation level for a period of time. All in all, they had still made a profit. However, they had not killed Ling Han. Little Black, let's go as well, Ling Han said to the large black dog. Peng Ling Han was immediately knocked over by a hoof, only to see that the black donkey's 2 hooves had both landed on his chest, and even its nose was spewing fire. Brat, who are you calling Little Black? Great. He had forgotten that this guy was also dressed entirely in black. Chapter 2561. Ling Han chuckled and said, I forgot about Senior. I was talking to that big black dog. The black donkey didn't really want to settle the score with him. It quickly retracted its hooves and said, Zhou Heng praised you so well, but there's nothing special about you around me. Zhou Heng. Ling Han was shocked and said, Is Senior on good terms with Senior Zhou Heng? Hee, that brat was brought up by me. The black donkey was instantly very proud. Ling Han couldn't help but nod to the big black dog in his heart. These two were definitely the same kind of people. They weren't even afraid to brag. Brat, what's with that look? The big black dog and the black donkey called out at the same time. As expected. Does Senior Zhou Heng have any instructions? Ling Han asked. The black donkey was shocked and said, That's right. That brat Zhou Heng did ask me to pass a few words to you. You're quite smart. Ling Han chuckled and said, Senior Zhou Heng went to the extraterrestrial battlefield? The black donkey nodded. Recently, the attacks launched by Frenzy have suddenly become more violent. The number of celestial venerables mobilized is shocking. Among them, there are even some new species that we haven't seen before. They've caused great losses on our side, so all the high-level celestial venerables have gone to hold the fort. How bad is the situation? Ling Han asked in a low voice. The extraterrestrial battlefield was closely related to everyone. Once Frenzy broke through the defensive line, the entire Yuan world would fall. Brat, this isn't something you should be concerned about right now. The black donkey scolded. Aren't you curious what that brat Zhou Heng wanted me to pass on to you? Ling Han finally said. Of course I'm curious. The black donkey couldn't help but feel depressed. This brat's expression clearly didn't have much curiosity. He was just brushing it off. That brat Zhou Heng said that if you don't want to increase your cultivation quickly, you can stay in the academy and improve step by step. However, if you want to charge into the 9 heavens in the shortest time possible, you can go to a place, the black donkey said. Ling Han's eyes lit up. What place? A very dangerous place that can easily consign you to eternal damnation, the black donkey said seriously. Not only was Ling Han not afraid, but he was even more excited. Senior Mule, please enlighten me. The black donkey shook its head. It's just as Zhou Heng said. You're really interested in that place. Ling Han chuckled. Erhe was the same kind of person, but he and Zhou Heng were the same kind of person. So what if it was dangerous? It would definitely be accompanied by opportunities. Wasn't challenging danger to improve oneself the best path of cultivation? That place is called the Cemetery of the Immortal King, said the black donkey. Cemetery? Ling Han looked at the black donkey with a strange expression. Was this guy asking him to rob a grave? It's not a real cemetery. It's just that there are too many immortal kings that have died there. It's like a cemetery. The black donkey pondered for a moment. Actually it should be called a mass grave. Many immortal kings don't even have a place to be buried. Ling Han was surprised. What kind of place is this? In the beginning, this was a prison where some extremely vicious and evil immortal kings were locked up, explained the black donkey. Since they were extremely vicious and evil, why didn't they just get rid of them? Asked Ling Han. The black donkey shook its head. Some immortal kings have extremely powerful backgrounds. If they were killed, it would cause huge problems. Ling Han understood now. These days, people with powerful backgrounds would not die no matter how big the trouble they caused. At most, they would be exiled or locked up. Unless there was a supreme figure presiding over the matter, they would cut the Gordian knot quickly. But with the threat of madness, everyone's goal was to resist it. They needed to unite all the high-end forces. They could not possibly turn against the celestial venerables, just because of 1 or 2 immortal kings, right? That's why the Immortal King prison appeared. The black donkey nodded. It knew that Ling Han had figured out what was going on. As time passed, there were more and more immortal kings in that prison, and the territory grew larger and larger. There are no rules there. It's full of killing, violence, and darkness. Just because you look at someone else, It might inexplicably trigger a fierce battle to the death. I don't know when it started, but an immortal king actually snuck in and trained there. In a short 100 million years, he advanced from the 4th level to the 9th level. When he appeared and spoke of his experiences over the years, it caused a huge commotion. Many immortal kings followed suit. But once more people entered, many were naturally discovered by the immortal kings inside, and were cruelly slaughtered. Immortal king blood spilled there every day, and immortal king corpses could be found everywhere. But with the immortal king's blood watered, there were also more immortal king medicines than any other place. Kid, do you still want to go there now? The black donkey looked at Ling Han. If you choose to go in, you will be responsible for your own life. In order to prevent the celestial venerables from going in to save people, several 7th-step celestial venerables joined forces to set up restrictions. It's easy to enter, but hard to leave. This venerable one cannot appear when you are in danger. He can only come and receive you at a fixed time. Ling Han immediately smiled. Of course I'm going. The black donkey bared its teeth. Aren't you going to think about it? There's no need. Ling Han was resolute and decisive. The black donkey bawled loudly. This brat Zhou Heng has guessed correctly again. This venerable one has lost again. Ayaya, you brat, will it kill you to think about it? It was so angry that its nostrils were spitting fire. This was a power that surpassed the regulations. It had intrinsic power, and it was incomparably terrifying. Ling Han, the Empress, and the large black dog hurriedly retreated. Only Wally was very interested. His eyes flickered continuously, as if he was trying to calculate the method of using this power. Ling Han chuckled. I'm really sorry, Senior Donkey. After the black donkey jumped for a while, it snickered. It's fine. As long as I send you away, I can say whatever I want. This meant that it was going to lie. Fuck, what celestial venerables? He was too shameless. The large black dog's eyes lit up, and he pounced over to hug the black donkey's leg. Brother, Grandpa Dog has finally found an idol. From today onwards, Grandpa Dog will follow you. The black donkey was very smug and extremely shameless. Ling Han was speechless. With the two of them together, who knew how many people they would harm in the future? What do you plan to do? He turned to ask the Empress. The Empress didn't speak and only smiled. She was so beautiful that she could topple cities. Ling Han nodded. The Empress would definitely advance and retreat with him. Moreover, he now had a spatial celestial tool that even a 9th heaven celestial king would find it hard to destroy. The Empress and the others would be quite safe by his side, as long as he could ensure his own safety. Brat, after you enter the celestial king's cemetery, you definitely can't expose your identity. The celestial kings there have been locked up for too long. Firstly, there's something wrong with their brains, and secondly, there's killing every day. Everyone is a pervert, and they hate celestial kings who come from the outside to train. So if your identity is exposed, everyone will want to beat you up. Even if you have 3 heads and 6 arms, and your cultivation level is at the 9th heaven, it's useless. One punch from each person will be enough to make you piss your pants. The black donkey warned. Ling Han nodded. Don't worry, Senior Donkey. I will be careful. Tisk, why should I worry? Who are you? Do you need my concern? The black donkey scoffed. Ling Han smiled. The black donkey was the same as the large black dog. They were definitely evil, but they also had a soft-hearted side. It was just that they always hid it, and purposely said some stubborn words. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 2562. Ling Han returned to his abode first. This trip to the cemetery of the Celestial King was definitely not a matter of a day or two. He needed to arrange everything properly. Bewitching Maiden Row and the women in the spatial celestial tool naturally had no objections, and wanted to follow Ling Han. Ling Han went to see the Rain Emperor, and after explaining the situation, the Rain Emperor expressed that he had not cultivated his own path, and needed to absorb the foundation of martial art for a period of time in the academy, but he would definitely go there. Ling Han naturally supported this second brother's idea. He went to Yin Xianlu and the others, as well as Ling Hua and the others, and left behind some alchemical pills. He set a time for himself, and planned to stay in the cemetery of the Celestial King for 100 million years. In these 100 million years he could not leave. Only by surviving until that time would the black donkey come to receive him. Otherwise he would have to become a celestial venerable and forcibly tear open a corner of the prison to escape. This was indeed an extremely risky decision. In any case, the large black dog and Wally did not say that they wanted to go with him, so they were very disloyal. Ling Han pulled Wally along to talk in detail for a few days, asking the latter to analyze his own path of martial arts. He had relied on his own trial and error to climb his way up, so there might be some minor details that he was lacking, and Wally's analysis was the most rigorous. Of course, Ling Han would not completely believe his analysis, but used it as a reference. He naturally did not have the time to challenge the Nine Deaths formation, but it was said that Tianxing had erupted, and his ranking in the 5th stage had greatly improved, surpassing Amu, Waning Moon, and the others, showing his freakish talent. Ling Han's resolve became even stronger. He definitely had to surpass Tianxing in cultivation level, and then defeat this guy, releasing that sliver of the will of the Heavenly Venerable of Original Birth, and thus revive the Heavenly Venerable of Original Birth. He temporarily set aside his conflict with Tianxing, Xiaoingxiong, and the others, and headed to the cemetery of the Celestial King with the black donkey leading. There are actually many students in the academy, but no one will reveal their identities. So if you really do end up fighting an enemy, you don't have to show any mercy. Otherwise you'll only be throwing your life away, Black Donkey warned. Ling Han nodded. Unless he could push his undying Immortal King physique to the 9th level, he would be able to escape unscathed, even if he were to face a 9th Heaven Immortal King. Otherwise, if he was surrounded by countless Immortal Kings, he would definitely be in trouble. Just look at Imperial Void Immortal King. He was one of the top existences amongst Immortal Kings. But when he was surrounded by tens of thousands of 9th level Heaven level chains, wasn't he still captured in the end? An army of ants could bite an elephant to death. Not to mention that there were numerous extraordinary figures in the Immortal King's cemetery. The black donkey tore through space. Celestial venerables were really fast, but the black donkey was still extremely careful. This was because it was very dangerous in the void, and it was possible for it to be attacked in a frenzy. Even if it was a first-step celestial venerable, it was very likely that it would be killed directly. Fortunately, they arrived at a cemetery without a hitch. Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Didn't they say that cemetery was just an adjective? Why did they really have to bring him to a cemetery? This is the entrance, stupid. The black donkey scoffed. It brought Ling Han to the front of a large tomb, stretched out its hoof, and pressed on the tombstone. The characters on the tombstone lit up one by one. Going in is easy, but coming out is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It reminded Ling Han again. In these 100 million years, you won't be able to obtain anyone's help. You can only rely on yourself. I know. Ling Han nodded. Go on. The black donkey kicked out. Pung, Ling Han's head slammed into the tombstone. His figure directly sank into the tombstone, and he disappeared without a trace. I'm really looking forward to seeing what heights this kid will reach in 100 million years. The black donkey rubbed its hoof, its face filled with anticipation. It tore open space and stepped inside. Instantly the space closed up, leaving only a faint ripple. After a while 3 figures flew over. It was as if they had stepped through the ages, and they exuded boundless tyranny. These 3 people were all 7th Heaven Immortal Kings, and their bodies were wrapped in 7 different colors. They were Gu Hui, Miaohua, and Xiaoingxiong. They had refined the energy-returning fruit and achieved breakthroughs in a short period of time, becoming 7th Heaven Immortal Kings. With their talent as Super Emperor stars, their battle prowess naturally far exceeded this level. That kid entered the Immortal King Cemetery. With his monstrous talent, if we let him grow, his cultivation will definitely surpass ours when he comes out. We have to get rid of him. Moreover, he has a huge secret. I suspect that he has been tempered by the 6 great intrinsic powers. Otherwise, his body technique wouldn't be so monstrous. Kill him and obtain this technique. Our chances of becoming heavenly venerables will definitely increase greatly. The three of them moved and pressed their hands on the tombstone. Immediately, the characters lit up again. The Immortal King's cemetery was easy to enter, but difficult to leave. Any immortal king could easily open the entrance. But if one wanted to leave, even ninth heaven immortal kings could only watch helplessly. Only heavenly venerables could use their own strength to tear open the restrictions. Xiao xiao xiao. The three of them also walked in. Ling Han was kicked out, and his figure staggered. When he steadied his feet, he saw that he had already arrived in a gloomy place. The sky was densely covered with dark clouds, and there was a black aura rising from the ground all around him, turning into all kinds of strange characters. He was in no hurry to leave. Instead, he adjusted his condition and adapted to the environment here. After a while, he stood up and surveyed his surroundings. This was a barren mountain, and not a single blade of grass grew. He advanced in a certain direction, spreading his celestial king power. 3 days later, a large city appeared in front of him. Spirit King City. These were the 3 large characters written above the city gates. The strokes were bold, and they exuded a kind of domineering aura. There was also a kind of wild intent, revealing the aura of a formidable hero in the world. There were actually guards outside the city gates, but they weren't celestial kings, but rather ascending origin tier ones. Ling Han was curious. Wasn't this place only to imprison celestial kings? But he immediately came to a realization. There were celestial kings who wholeheartedly pursued the peak of martial art. But there were also celestial kings who liked to have fun. And there were countless killings here, which would also give rise to another kind of primitive desire. Thus, it wasn't strange for celestial kings to give birth and reproduce. Halt! Ling Han had just arrived at the city gates when he was stopped by these guards. Do you have an entry talisman? They asked. Ling Han already had a rough idea that there were many powerful celestial kings here that had established their own territories. For example, the Spirit King City was one of them, and the entry talisman was an identity talisman created by a certain force, proving that you were a member of this place. The various forces didn't prohibit the movement of people, as long as they could afford the entry fee. Ling Han shook his head. I have just entered this place, and don't have an entry talisman. Once these words were spoken, these guards immediately acted, as if they were facing a great enemy. Someone sent out a signal, and a 7th heaven celestial king appeared, sizing up Ling Han. What crime did you commit? This celestial king asked. Ling Han smiled calmly. Killed someone in the #1 martial academy in the world, and was sentenced to stay here forever. That 7th heaven celestial king couldn't help but be shocked. The words #1 martial academy in the world carried too much weight. Those who could enter it were at least monarch tiers, and there were even emperor stars, super emperor stars, and even freaks whose evolution index had reached 12. He revealed a serious expression. Who did you kill, and why did you kill him? The Black Donkey and Ling Han had already verified his identity. His current name was Li Long, and he had indeed killed someone. His name was Zhao Ting, and this could be found in the #1 martial academy in the world. Chapter 2564. Replying, young master, Li Long is here. The celestial king leading the way said respectfully, kneeling on one knee. A young man turned around, glanced at Ling Han, and said with a smile, What are you still standing there for? Come and sit. He waved at Ling Han, and pointed at an empty seat. Ling Han strode forward, arrived at the empty seat and sat down. Just as his butt was about to touch the chair, a young man acted. Pa! The chair beneath him instantly shattered into pieces, and a huge force pressed down, forcing Ling Han to sit on the ground. The person who acted was surrounded by 3 rays of light, and was also a celestial king of the 3rd heaven. A show of strength. Ling Han sat down, as if there was a chair beneath him, and the pressure from that celestial king was easily dispersed by him. He casually took out a chair from his spatial immortal tool, and used it to cushion his butt, so that he could sit steadily. Is this how young Master Tang treats his guests? Ling Han said with a smile. So poor that you even have to prepare your own chair. Ha 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 ha. Tang Yuan immediately laughed. He walked towards the celestial king, and said, Luo Yang, This is the genius from the #1 martial institution in the world. Impressive, right? The celestial king called Luo Yang smiled indifferently. He hadn't used his full strength in that attack just now, and was confident that if he used his full strength, he would definitely be able to take down Ling Han. These spoiled brats were all born here, lived here, and grew up here. Naturally, they didn't think that the #1 martial institution in the world was anything special. You can be considered to have some strength, he said. This young master admires young and promising people the most. Tang Yuan pointed at himself. I'll give you a chance. Follow me, and I can guarantee that in this Ghost King city, you can do whatever you want, and no one will dare to touch a single hair on your head. Hurry up and thank young Master Tang. The young men who were sitting and performing immediately called out to Ling Han. Ling Han indeed had the thought of enduring silently and keeping a low profile, but to make him submit to others and become a dog, this was something that he could not accept at all. He faintly smiled. Thank you for your appreciation, young Master Tang, but I'm used to being alone, so I'll continue to be alone. Li Long. Luo Yang stood up and revealed a cold smile. Don't be so shameless. Do you still think that this is the #1 martial courtyard under the heavens, and that you are still a favored son of heaven? His words were filled with jealousy, although they were all young masters or young masters. To put it bluntly, which one of them wasn't a prisoner? They could only lord over this small place, and be a frog at the bottom of a well. Moreover, they had no other choice. It was not because they had committed some great crime that they were locked up here, but because their parents were prisoners here. They were born with an unerasable mark and were trapped here forever. As such, their actions were incomparably unbridled, using this method to vent their unwillingness. They were also extremely jealous of the outsiders, because they at least had a choice. Ling Han sat upright, unmoving. Are you lecturing me? You're asking for a beating. Luo Yang attacking Ling Han. I'll let you off once, but that doesn't mean I'm easy to bully, Ling Han said darkly. He clenched his fist and punched towards Luo Yang. Bang! When their fists met, Luo Yang let out a muffled groan. His entire body was sent flying, and he smashed into a fake rock, shattering it into pieces. Only then did he stop. Ling Han was astonished. It wasn't because he hadn't managed to kill Luo Yang with a single punch, but rather because he had held back. He was very clear about this, but rather because Luo Yang had only broken a rock before stopping. According to his estimations, Luo Yang should have been sent flying by him, at least half the city. This rock was extremely hard. Ha 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 ha, as expected, you're very strong. Tang Yuan applauded. You sent Luo Yang flying with one punch. Among third-stage immortal kings, you can be ranked in the top 10. The other young immortal kings were shocked speechless. Luo Yang struggled to get up, his face filled with disbelief. He originally didn't believe that someone from the #1 martial courtyard under the heavens was that amazing. But both of them were at the same realm, and yet he was sent flying with one punch. The difference was obvious. But more than that, he was furious. Luo Yang had embarrassed himself in front of everyone. If not for Tang Yuan not saying anything, he would have called for reinforcements and killed Ling Han on the spot. After all, it was very common for immortal kings to die here. Tang Yuan stopped applauding and said, With your strength, I can allow you to not be a dog. How about this, you fight in the death arena for me. As long as you win the title of Blood War King, I will bestow you a ascending dragon pill. Young Master Tang. The other youths were shocked and jealous. They stood up one after another. Ling Han was surprised. Was this ascending dragon pill that impressive? It actually made these youths so excited. You don't know what a ascending dragon pill is, right? A young immortal king glanced at Ling Han. A ascending dragon pill can increase our chances of breaking through to the next realm. Furthermore, it can be stacked to a maximum of 10%. 10%. Even though this chance wasn't high, there were 9 heavens in the immortal king realm. Every step was like ascending to the heavens. To the vast majority of immortal kings, they might be bound to a certain realm for their entire lives. For example, the 4th or 7th heavens. Hence, not to mention a 10% chance of breaking through. Even if it was only 1% or 1,000th of a percent, it was still an incomparably precious chance. They had to fight for it with all their might. No wonder, when they heard Tang Yuan say that he wanted to bestow a ascending dragon pill to Ling Han. These people were so anxious that their eyes turned red. Ling Han came to a sudden realization. No wonder these people could reach the second, or even the third heavens despite their mediocre aptitudes. They must have used ascending dragon pills to reach that height. However, this ascending dragon pill was too monstrous, wasn't it? It actually had such an effect. Ling Han muttered to himself and then said, "What's going on with this death arena?" The death arena is naturally a place for battles. As long as one can win 10 battles in a row, one can obtain the title of Blood War King. One of the celestial kings explained. However, don't think that it's easy to win 10 battles in a row. On average, there's only one such person every 100 years. Also, this celestial king seemed to be intentionally trying to scare Ling Han. After entering the death arena, the death rate is as high as 40%. Ling Han, however, revealed a smile. "It sounds very interesting. I'll participate." He had come here to fight, and this death arena should be the best choice for him. The few young celestial kings were all stunned. They had already told him that the death arena was incomparably dangerous, but he actually decided to participate without any hesitation. How much confidence did he have in himself? Tang Yuan clapped his hands and laughed. Good. As expected, this young master didn't choose the wrong person. Li Long, if you can obtain the title of Blood War King, this young master will definitely not treat you unfairly. Ling Han merely smiled. He naturally wouldn't take this kind of spoiled brat seriously. "Come, let's drink." Tang Yuan was in a very good mood. He exchanged toasts with the others, and very quickly he was half drunk. This kind of wine was really strong. Even with Ling Han's strength, he was somewhat unable to withstand it, let alone these ordinary celestial kings. Tang Yuan was very anxious, and he immediately made arrangements for Ling Han. The first battle would be held 3 days later. Ling Han also gained a detailed understanding of this death arena. Chapter 2565. The death arena lived up to its name. Ever since its opening, who knew how many celestial kings had died? It was the most famous killing ground in the city, but at the same time, it was also the most popular place. Being exiled here meant that one's life would be in danger at every turn. Everyone would become crazy, and they would be filled with interest in seeing others wounded, bleed, or even die. Furthermore, the cultivation speed of the people here was especially fast, as if the heaven and earth were compensating them. Those that could advance into the Celestial King tier would advance to the Celestial King tier at a terrifying speed. But some were slow, and stopped at the Mountain River tier, and Severing Mundane tier long ago, unable to advance even an inch. Thus, even though many Celestial Kings had died, there were Celestial Kings that had committed crimes here. And added with the fact that the children born here could also advance into the Celestial King tier very quickly, the number of Celestial Kings had always remained high. Ling Han sighed ruefully. Perhaps this kind of situation could only occur in super high-level planes. Otherwise, even if the Celestial Kings that had resisted the invasion of the Otherworld were included, the number of Celestial Kings would only be in the tens of thousands, at most the number of a city here. Don't say that 10 consecutive victories could obtain the title of Blood War King. But the difficulty was ridiculously high. That was because the first 5 consecutive victories were easy, but once this number was exceeded, the arena would target them, sending out elites to snipe them. In fact, they would even send out another Blood War King for the last battle. Of course, all the Celestial Kings that came out to battle had similar cultivation levels, and would only be 1 cultivation level higher at most. But if they encountered this kind of situation, they could choose to avoid battle and request to change opponents. However, they could only change opponents 3 times at most, or their consecutive victories would be ended, and they would have to start all over again. Above the Blood War King, there was still the 100-victory Blood War King, and the 1,000-victory Blood War King. Then, there was no need for consecutive victories, and it would be enough as long as their victories reached 100 or 1,000. In the Cemetery of Celestial Kings, not just the Ghost King City, death arenas like this were the most popular, and spoilt young masters like Tang Yuan were also proud of having a blood war king, and would often send out their own blood war king to battle with the blood war king of others. Previously, Tang Yuan had a blood war king, and he had 97 victories. However, when he was trying to achieve 100 blood war king victories, he was targeted by another spoiled brat in the city and killed on the spot. This caused Tang Yuan to lose a lot of face, and he had to fight a few fierce battles with him. He was Lu Li, the son of another ninth firmament immortal monarch in the city Lu Gaoquan. This spoiled brat wasn't a good person either. He had poisoned Tang Yuan's king of blood wars wine, causing him to suffer a great loss in combat strength. The two spoiled brats were already at odds with each other because of the power struggles of their fathers. After this incident, they were even more opposed to each other. They would fight whenever they saw someone above them, but no one was killed. As for people like Luo Yang, they were actually profligates. Their fathers were either 8th Firmament Immortal Kings or 7th Firmament Immortal Kings. Since their fathers were led by Tang Mingbo, they were led by Tang Yuan. This was a group of interests. They were bound together for good or bad. Li Long, if you can kill that bastard Lu Li's king of blood war again, I'll give you another rising dragon pellet. Tang Yuan was drunk and gave Ling Han another reward. Ling Han smiled faintly. His evolution index had reached 12, so why would he need a rising dragon pellet? However, he didn't mind taking it and studying it. Luo Yang and the others were extremely jealous, but they remembered how difficult it was to become a king of blood war. Lu Li was an extremely sinister person. If he knew of Ling Han's existence, he would definitely try to kill him. Becoming a king of blood war was already difficult enough, not to mention killing Lu Li's king of blood war. Just wait to lose your head. They all laughed coldly. Did he really think that rising dragon pellets were easy to earn? Ling Han didn't return to the inn. Rich kids like Tang Yuan also knew how to buy people's hearts, so he arranged for Ling Han to stay in a side courtyard. He even sent 3 beautiful maids to sleep with him. Naturally, this was rejected by Ling Han. Regarding this, Tang Yuan felt that it was inconceivable that there was actually a man who didn't like women. However, at the same time, he had a higher opinion of Ling Han and was full of expectations. He was also a person of considerable power in the city. Under his arrangements, he even disrupted the arena's previous arrangements and arranged for Ling Han to cut the queue. 3 days later, Ling Han appeared in the arena. Li Long, you have to fight for me, Tang Yuan said to Ling Han backstage. I've bet a lot of money on you. So if you dare to lose, you will either die in the arena, or I will personally kill you and hang your head on the flagpole in the arena. After sobering up, Tang Yuan displayed the cruel and unreasonable side of a rich kid. He would kill anyone who disappointed him. This was the law of the land. Ling Han had the urge to kill, but he suppressed it. He thought to himself, I must get rid of this rich kid before I leave the cemetery of the immortal king. Does he really think he can do whatever he wants just because he has a father in the 9th heaven? Tang Yuan naturally didn't know what Ling Han was thinking. Otherwise, he would definitely kill Ling Han first. Seeing that Ling Han didn't say anything, he only thought that Ling Han was afraid and listened to his threat. He couldn't help but reveal a satisfied smile. However, if you perform well, I will not mistreat you. I will definitely give you what you deserve. His tone suddenly changed, and after giving Ling Han a good smack, he rewarded him with a piece of candy. Ling Han couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. When the drum sounded, he walked out of the resting room with large strides and arrived at the arena. Since immortal kings could fight here, the defenses were naturally strong. Otherwise, a casual blow from an immortal king would cause this place to collapse. Ling Han had seen how hard the rocks here were. When Luo Yang had been blasted by him earlier, he'd actually only broken a rock before stopping. This was enough to prove it. Was it because the celestial sovereign had used a method to prevent the immortal kings here from escaping? So the rocks and earth had become incomparably hard. As Ling Han's imagination ran wild, his opponent also appeared at this time. Blackside Li Long, this is the contestant personally recommended by our young master Tang Yuan. He's at the 3rd heaven of the immortal king, but his strength is unknown. Everyone, Please open your eyes and witness for yourselves. The commentator said loudly from the high platform. He was also an immortal king. And even though he was only at the first heaven, it was not a problem for his voice to reach every corner of the arena. This commentator was very passionate, and he instantly roused the emotions of the audience, causing waves of screams. Next is the red side. This is a contestant we're already somewhat familiar with. The commentator continued his introduction. In Boni, a genius from the Tanya plane. He has a terrifying weapon, and is known as the Magic Saw Killer. He's already won 4 matches in a row. Today, will Li Long stop Boni's 4 consecutive victories? Or will Boni continue to expand his winning streak? As long as Boni wins this match, he'll enter the Blood War King's true challenge round. Is everyone excited? Boom! Everyone cheered. There were all sorts of people in the audience, including men and women, adults and children. But all of them were incomparably crazy, shouting hysterically. Tang Yuan, is this your new pet? A young man asked Tang Yuan from the VIP seats, his face full of disdain. Chapter 2566. Oh, you don't like him? Tang Yuan asked. The young man sat in the same row as Tang Yuan, while Luo Yang and the others sat in the row behind. Clearly, this young man was on equal footing with Tang Yuan. This person was called Zhao Shuang, and he was also the son of a 9th heaven immortal king. Otherwise, he would not be qualified to sit with Tang Yuan. He paced back and forth between Ling Han and Imponi a few times, and said, although Imponi is also at the 3rd layer of the heaven tier, he is still a monarch tier. It's just that he hasn't passed through the 9 extremes formation of the number 1 martial arts academy. His own strength cannot be underestimated. Moreover, he has a weapon from the technological plane, the demonic saw, which is extremely powerful. Because of this, he was able to kill a student of the martial institution. He only did not want to anger the Empyrean of that plane, so he was exiled here. There is nothing special about your pet. How can he be a match for Imponi? Tang Yuan laughed. Why don't we make a bet? Bet on what? Zhao Shuang was not afraid. Let's bet on 3 polo immortal flowers. Tang Yuan thought about it. Zhao Shuang's eyes narrowed. Tang Yuan, you are so confident. The polo immortal king's value was astonishing. Although he could take it out, it would still hurt him for a while. Tang Yuan's net worth was similar to his, and he had lost a large sum of money because of the death of his blood war monarch. He was so poor, but he still dared to bet so much. So confident. He looked at Ling Han and smiled. I'll bet. He did not like Ling Han, and thought that Tang Yuan was just trying to save face. Tang Yuan laughed and said, this Li Long is a student of the number 1 martial institution. What? Zhao Shuang was shocked. To be able to enter the number 1 martial institution, one had to at least have the aptitude of an emperor, and one of the best among emperors. This was because not all emperors could pass the 9 extremes formation. Imponi was the best counterexample. But after thinking about it, Zhao Shuang relaxed. So what if he was a student of the martial institution? Imponi had killed one. Tang Yuan's face was still full of smiles as he continued. You should know that this fellow was exiled here, because he killed a student of the martial institution. Zhao Shuang was shocked again. Ling Han had also killed a martial arts institution student. How do you know? He couldn't help but ask. Tang Yuan was extremely complacent. This fellow just entered the Immortal King's cemetery a few days ago, and he just happened to encounter Xiang Jun's old man when he entered the city. After that, I received the news and hurriedly recruited this fellow. Zhao Shuang bared his teeth. Xiang Ming is your father's subordinate. No wonder I didn't receive any news. It turned out that Xiang Ming had suppressed it. Tang Yuan laughed loudly. The Ghost Monarch capital had more than 29th firmament immortal monarchs. Although Immortal Monarch Green Ghost was the leader, everyone had their own interests. Naturally, they could not avoid scheming and fighting for power. What's so funny? A charming voice rang out. A black-clothed woman walked over. She wore a dress, but not only did it reveal her jade-like arms, but even the large patch of white flesh on her chest was not concealed. One could clearly see the 2 lumps. The dress only reached her knees, revealing 2 fair calves. She did not wear shoes, and her jade-like beautiful feet were petite and exquisite. Her 10 fingernails were pink, like a blooming flower. It was very alluring. Her hair was as black as ink, but her red lips were as red as a blazing flame. Her nose bridge was high, and her eyes were slightly green. Her entire person exuded a wild temptation. When Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang saw this woman, they could not help but reveal a look of greed at the same time. However, there was even more fear. They did not dare to take another look at her towering breasts and perky buttocks. They were extremely well-behaved. This was because this charming woman was called Yang Xiaoling. Her father was also a 9th heavenly layer immortal king, and she herself was a 4th heavenly layer immortal king. Just this alone was not enough to make these two spoiled brats so afraid. This woman was a poisonous spider who loved to play with men. And not just for fun, but to break, cripple and play to death. Even if these two loved beauties, they only dared to drool in front of this woman. They did not dare to touch her at all. Sister Ling, Tang Yuan, and Zhao Shuang called out at the same time. There were 3 spoiled brats in the Ghost King Palace. Clearly, their status was a level higher, and Yang Xiaoling was one of them. Yang Xiaoling swayed her little, but as she walked over, behind her were 10 bare-chested men. All of them were incomparably muscular, and their bodies were wrapped in strange colors of different colors. These were all her gigolos. She never minded letting others know that she had such interests and strong desires in this area. That brat is your new pet. Yang Xiaoling sat down and pointed a slender finger at Ling Han. Yes, Tang Yuan said obediently. Tang Yuan said obediently. Although Yang Xiaoling could not kill him, if she just beat him up, his father naturally would not fall out with the Yang family because of this. Generally speaking, as long as things did not cause too much trouble, the father's generation would not interfere in their squabbles. Yang Xiaoling licked her slightly thick lips. There was a bit of saliva on them that reflected the light, and there was a kind of misty wanton look to them. She said, "If this brat obtains the title of Blood War King, then let him play with me for a few days. Sister Ling, it's his honor to be able to sleep with you," Tang Yuan hurriedly said. Tang Yuan said hurriedly. Yang Xiaoling had already spoken, so even if Ling Han was played to death, he would not dare to say a word. "Then let's perform. I hope this fellow doesn't have such a handsome face for nothing," said Yang Xiaoling. Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang both muttered to each other in their hearts. What was the use of being handsome? Men had to have strength and authority. That was the most important thing. On the stage, Ling Han and Imponi stood 30 meters apart from each other. The commentator was still nagging to stir up the audience's emotions. "Shut up, or I'll do you first." Imponi suddenly roared at the commentator. Boom. Not only did the audience not throw away their banana peels because of these words, they instead became incomparably fervent. What they needed was precisely this kind of lawless person to put on a bloody slaughter for them. The commentator, on the other hand, was frightened by Imponi's blood-red eyes. That was too overflowing with killing intent. He did not dare to test Imponi's courage, because the lives of people here were too worthless. Even immortal kings were like grass. "Then let the battle begin," he shouted loudly. "Kiki, pretty boy, I'll stomp your face into meat paste, and then stab my demonic saw into your butt." Imponi took out a saw blade. After activating it, the blade's teeth immediately spun at high speed. Ling Han was shocked, because there were no runes on the blade, but he felt that it was filled with power. This wasn't an immortal item, he immediately concluded. It was a product of the technological plane. It wasn't an immortal item, but it still possessed power comparable to an immortal item. This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind in an instant. So what? With his absolute strength, he could defeat him with a single punch. "Die, pretty boy." Imponi brandished his demonic saw and charged towards Ling Han. With just a tap of his foot, he suddenly appeared in front of Ling Han. The blade's teeth spun rapidly, and an ear-piercing sound rang out. Chapter 2568. Soon the servant led 2 people over. The one in front was full of arrogance, as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know he was a spoiled brat. The only thing missing was the words, "I'm awesome," written on his face. The other person was very low-key. His eyes were on the ground, like a puppet. Every step the person in front took, he would take a step. There was not a single mistake between their steps. Both of them were immortal kings. One had 2 lights around him, and the other had 3. Luli, Tang Yuan said to the arrogant person. He wanted to control his emotions and make it seem like he had everything under control. But he couldn't help but show his hatred. Last time, when they fought, Luli suffered a crushing defeat. Not only did Luli's Monarch of Blood fail to reach 100 wins, but he was also smashed into pieces. Luli lost a lot of money, which made him hate Luli to the core. Tang Yuan, Luli laughed. He had gained the upper hand in their most recent confrontation, so he naturally had the upper hand in terms of psychological advantage. He said to Ling Han, "This is your new recruit. His name is Li Long." "So what?" Tang Yuan asked. Luli ignored Tang Yuan, and instead said to Li Long, "Li Long, follow me." The moment he opened his mouth, he went straight to poach Li Long. If you follow someone like Tang Yuan, you will only be buried. Plus, do you know how your predecessor died? He was killed by my king of blood war, he said coldly. These words were full of threats. If you don't follow me, then you will have the same fate as your predecessor, dying in the hands of his king of blood war. Tang Yuan was shaking with anger. He pointed at Lu Li and said, "Lu Li, you've gone too far." Lu Li laughed. "Loser, stay on the side." He then turned to Ling Han. "How about it? Do you want to die miserably, or live a life of glory?" Everyone was angry. This guy was too arrogant. He came to someone else's territory to openly poach and threaten them. He didn't respect the Tang family at all. Ling Han ignored him. He was wondering if he should teach another spoiled brat a lesson when he left. "How disappointing," Lu Li said as he shook his head. "I thought you were a smart person, but now you're just too stupid." Tang Yuan controlled his emotions. "Lu Li, just you wait. I will definitely make you swallow those words," Lu Li said with disdain. "Let this punk become the king of blood warrior first. Otherwise, he won't even be qualified to fight against my subordinates." Blood war monarchs could challenge non-blood war monarchs, but non-blood war monarchs could only challenge other blood war monarchs after becoming a blood war monarch. Tang Yuan said coldly, "That's a small matter. Let your blood war monarch wash his neck clean. Sooner or later, I'll make him bleed. It's not that easy to become the king of bloodbath. Come and challenge me after you pass this stage," Lu Li said as he waved his sleeves. "This kind of banquet is boring. It's boring. I'm leaving." He turned to leave. "You want to leave so easily after entering my territory?" Tang Yuan said coldly. If he allowed the other party to leave so easily, how would he be able to face others in the future? "What? You want to make me stay?" Lu Li sneered. "Yuan, bring up the rear." The person who hadn't said a word all this time stood still, and then turned around. Clang! A sword appeared in his hand, making a crisp sound. The sword hummed and trembled, emitting a cold, murderous aura. He was just one person and one sword, but he emitted a domineering aura that made the crowd retreat. It was as if as long as he didn't fall, no one could break through his defense. "Kill him," Tang Yuan said coldly. He didn't dare to kill Lu Li, but he didn't have a problem with his dogs. He could even cut them into pieces. "I'll do it." A young immortal king jumped out. He was also a third heaven immortal king, and his cultivation was higher than Tang Yuan's. It was just that his father's status was not as high as Tang Buyuan's, so he could only be Tang Yuan's follower. Xiao, he pounced forward, a sword already in his hand. With a flying celestial sword, he slashed at the throat of Yuan. "Remember, you will die at my gua." Pooh. Before he could finish his name, his head was cut off, and blood spurted out from the severed neck. In a battle of the same rank, he was beheaded with one slash. What kind of overwhelming strength was this? Most importantly, a Yuan was too cruel. The father of the person he killed was a 7th-level celestial king, although a 7th heaven immortal king couldn't compare to a supreme existence in the 9th heaven. How could a 3rd heaven immortal king afford to offend one? Yuan sheathed his sword. He looked at the crowd with a strangely cold and emotionless gaze. It was as if he wasn't looking at a bunch of lively people, but livestock waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone was frightened. He killed without any hesitation, and he had completely suppressed everyone. Meanwhile, Ling Han looked at Yuan with interest. In his mind, he was replaying the sword strike just now. In terms of strength, he wasn't strong enough to crush his opponent, but the speed of his sword strike was too fast. So fast that his opponent couldn't defend against it. This person seemed to be worth a fight. Ha ha ha. Lu Li laughed loudly. Tang Yuan, you still want to fight me? You really overestimate yourself. In front of my new subordinate, do you think a pretty boy like you can withstand a sword strike? He strode away, and no one dared to stop him. After Lu Li left, Yuan sheathed his sword, turned around and walked step by step. His movements were sluggish like a puppet. But even though his steps were so comical, no one laughed out loud. They only felt a chill run down their spine. It wasn't until Yuan's figure disappeared that the crowd felt the air warm up. This person's murderous aura was so strong that he could affect others without them realizing it. If his mind was taken away, even if his original strength was similar, he would still be defeated. Trash, you're all a bunch of trash. Tang Yuan suddenly lost his temper. He glanced at everyone and smashed his wine cup. Lu Li had come to spoil his fun, but he still fell for it. There was nothing he could do. Who wouldn't be angry after being bullied like this? Tang Yuan smashed his cup and flipped over the table. Then he turned around and left. What kind of celebration was this? He had no interest in it. But only 4 days later, Ling Han was scheduled for a second battle. According to the usual practice, after a battle, one would need to rest for at least a month. This was because injuries were inevitable in a fierce battle of life and death. It wasn't strange for some people to rest for hundreds of years. However, Ling Han won the first battle cleanly. He didn't suffer any injuries, and Tang Yuan was also very angry. Naturally, he wanted Ling Han to become Bloodbath King as soon as possible, so that he could challenge Lu Li's Bloodbath King. Ling Han's second opponent was a veteran in the arena. He had fought no less than 1,000 battles, but he had won at most 7 in a row. However, to be able to fight 1,000 battles without dying and win 7 in a row showed that his combat ability was not ordinary. It was just that no one was willing to invest in him anymore. He fought in the arena purely to make a living and earn some cultivation resources. Actually, there was an appearance fee for fighting in the arena, which was determined by one's strength and popularity. Young man, go easy on me. As soon as the person arrived, Ling Han greeted him with a smile. Reading on mobile. Chapter 2569. Fixing was strictly prohibited in the arena. Once it was discovered, all the people involved in the fixing would be executed. This was because the owner of this arena was Green Ghost Immortal King, who dared to challenge his authority. Previously, the son of a 9th Firmament Immortal King had gotten his subordinate to fix the match for gambling money. In the end, he was killed by Green Ghost Immortal King without giving his father any face. After this incident, no rich second generation dared to get their subordinates to fix the match. Now, the veteran was asking Ling Han to show mercy, not because he wanted to fix the match, but because he hoped that Ling Han wouldn't kill him if he were to lose. Ling Han smiled faintly. He wasn't a homicidal maniac, and didn't have a hobby of killing his opponents. No problem. Thank you, said the veteran with a smile. On the stage, Hu Jing is using this move again. This fellow is the most sinister. He has tricked many people into thinking that he was being honest and currying favor. In the end, he suddenly attacked and easily lost his life. This gigolo must have fallen for it. So what if he's strong? If he's not smart, he's just sending himself to his death. There's no other way. He's a newcomer. He doesn't know that to survive here, he has to be ruthless. Once he attacks, he won't show any mercy. Otherwise, he's just courting death. Everyone discussed. Those who had been here for a long time naturally knew what kind of person the veteran was. Lad, let me teach you a lesson. Hu Jing pretended that he wanted to talk to Ling Han. And when he got close enough, he suddenly launched an attack. A flash of saber light soared into the sky. He was indeed as sinister as everyone had said. What he said previously was just to lower Ling Han's guard. It was all to pave the way for this saber strike. There was a sneer at the corner of his mouth. The reason why he rarely fought in the arena now was because this move of his wouldn't work if he used it for too long. Therefore, he needed a period of time to wait until everyone had almost forgotten about him before he came out to play dirty. With how sinister he was, he had naturally found a way out for himself. If Ling Han was so powerful that even such a sudden attack couldn't injure him, he would immediately retreat. There was a safe passage at the side of the arena. As long as one entered the passage, the battle in the arena would stop. Although Ling Han did not place this opponent in his eyes, once the battle started, he would definitely not let his guard down. Moreover, his strength was really too much higher than his opponent's. When his opponent's saber slashed over, before the saber light had even reached him, he had already reacted and punched out. Bam Hu Jing felt his hands go numb. He couldn't hold the hilt of his saber at all, and was immediately sent flying. He turned pale with fright. He didn't expect his opponent's strength to be far beyond his imagination. Without any hesitation, he immediately ran toward the safe passage. The speed of an immortal king was extremely fast. In a flash, he was already close to the passage, but at this moment, he heard a gentle voice in his ear. "Why are you running?" However, in Hu Jing's ears, this was simply like a talisman that hastened his death, and it caused goosebumps to arise all over his body. However, he increased the strength in his legs and ran even faster. Pa! He felt a weight on his shoulder and stopped involuntarily. "Ah!" he roared, and a sharp knife suddenly appeared in his hand. He stabbed it toward Ling Han's ribs. "Brother, you're too unreasonable," Ling Han said with a smile. He casually grabbed the knife, and the sharp knife fell into his hand. Hu Jing also smiled, but this smile was extremely forced. It was even harder than crying. "Little brother, don't misunderstand. I was really teaching you a lesson just now. You must be wary of some treacherous people who will use your kindness." This person's shamelessness was really unimaginable. Ling Han laughed. "Then how should I deal with these treacherous people?" Hu Jing's eyes rolled around. He naturally wouldn't say that he was going to kill him. He immediately said righteously, "You have to teach them a good lesson. How can they be so shameless?" Ling Han shook his head. "I think it's better to kill them. Once and for all, it'll save us trouble." "Spare me," Hu Jing screamed. "I have my parents and children to take care of. If I die, my whole family will be finished." Ling Han was surprised. He already knew that this person was extremely shameless, but he was still shocked that he had no lower limit. Shwa! It was at this moment that Hu Jing suddenly shot out a leg, kicking straight at the top of Ling Han's head. And there was shockingly a flash of cold light on the tip of his foot. There was actually a sharp knife hidden under the sole of his shoe. Hu Jing only felt that the sharp knife on his foot had pierced into his bones. This feeling was all too familiar to him. He didn't know how many people he had killed. He was instantly overjoyed. However, before he could smile, he suddenly screamed. That was because his saber had stabbed into the palm of his own hand. It turned out that Ling Han had grabbed his right hand at some point in time, and then used it as a shield in front of him, causing him to suffer a leg saber strike. He was in pain, but his heart was filled with panic. He had used a series of ultimate moves, but they were all easily dispelled by Ling Han. This person's strength was beyond his imagination. He broke out in cold sweat. At this point, if Ling Han would still spare him, even he himself wouldn't believe it. Ling Han smiled. "What other moves do you have?" He was very curious. This person could use his shamelessness to come up with many dirty tricks. Hu Jing was speechless. Firstly, he really didn't have any more moves. Secondly, even if he did, he knew that it would be useless against Ling Han's absolute strength. "That's all? How disappointing." Ling Han shook his head, then raised his fist. "Do you have any last words that you want me to pass to your family?" How could Hu Jing be old or young? He had only made them up. In such a moment of despair, his ferocious nature erupted. His left hand, which was not under his control, stabbed towards Ling Han's eyes, and innumerable chains surged out from his body. These were chains of rules formed by the Great Tao. He didn't expect to kill Ling Han, but only hoped that he could hurt him. Ling Han casually tossed Hu Jing out. Pung! His body suddenly exploded in midair, turning into a rain of blood that rained down. This kind of sinister, shameless person naturally wouldn't be merciful to Ling Han. Li Longsheng. The commentator loudly announced the result. The audience cheered. Ling Han had won both times by completely destroying his opponent. This had completely satisfied their desire to see the cruel side. Ling Han, however, didn't look happy. He didn't kill people because he liked them, but because he felt that they deserved to die. Tang Yuan's mood was a little better. Ling Han winning both battles was naturally within his expectations, but he was still pleasantly surprised that he had won so quickly. He couldn't help but want to suppress Lu Li. Recently, he had suffered too many losses, and was about to be laughed at by the other rich second generations. In the following days, Ling Han would fight almost every 3 days, and it was always a one-sided victory. As long as the opponent wasn't too much, he wouldn't purposely take someone's life. After 10 days, Ling Han had already won 5 times in a row. At this point, the following battles wouldn't be easy. The arena would deliberately target him, doing everything possible to prevent him from becoming the king of Bloodbath. This title was a kind of honor, a kind of affirmation of one's strength. How could it be given to someone so easily? This time, the wait was a little longer. After 10 days, Ling Han finally waited for his 6th opponent. Reading on mobile phone is more refreshing. Chapter 2570. The 6th opponent was different. This meant that Ling Han had officially entered the process of challenging for the title of Blood War King. In the Immortal King's cemetery, every single city controlled the title of Blood War King extremely strictly, and it wouldn't allow others to obtain it easily. It caused it to truly become a form of supreme glory. In this way, so long as the Blood War King participated in the battle, then he would be able to win over the spectators. Thus, after careful consideration, the management of the tournament had finally arranged an opponent for Ling Han. Before this, even Tang Yuan had not managed to find out the slightest bit of information, so he had absolutely no idea who Ling Han's opponent was this time. The black side is a newcomer who recently appeared in our death arena, Li Long. The commentator began to brag loudly. According to the information I obtained, Li Long is a student of the #1 martial institution in the world. He killed another student and was sentenced to be exiled here. Killing a fellow disciple was a very serious crime, but when the commentator's voice fell, everyone cheered excitedly, as if they were treating Ling Han as a hero, who here had not committed a crime before. The more vicious and cruel one was, the more respect they would win. Although Ling Han's crime was not so serious that it could not be tolerated, everyone still treated him well. This guy had a bright future. Now, Li Long has already won 5 times in a row, and has entered the stage of challenging for the title of Blood War King. Today is the first hurdle he will face. Will he be able to kill his opponent with a clean punch, like he did the previous 5 times? Let us wait and see. The commentator paused for a moment, then raised his voice and shouted, "Now, let us reveal the identity of the sniper. That is Xian." Boom! Everyone's emotions were instantly ignited. "Xian! Xian! Xian!" They shouted one after another. At first it was very messy, but it quickly connected into one. It was neat and orderly like thunder, with an extremely shocking aura. Looks like this Xian is quite popular. Let's cheer even louder. Please bring out our sniper. The commentator seemed to have gone crazy. The red side Xian, a warrior who once won 8 times in a row. Bang! A figure leapt out from the passageway of the arena and landed heavily on the ground, raising a cloud of dust. This was a 3rd firmament immortal monarch. It was only the first round, but the arena did not take Ling Han seriously enough to send a 4th firmament immortal monarch. Siwayan was a blue-eyed golden-haired man. He was very burly, and his arms and thighs were exposed. His skin was very white, but it was covered in golden hair, giving people the feeling that he was a gorilla. He was very flashy, constantly flexing his muscles, and even lifted his shirt, causing the women on the stage to scream. After triggering a small climax, Cyan yelled softly. His body emitted a silver light, and he entered a silver armor. He instantly turned into a 3-meter-tall small giant. External items such as battle armors and immortal artifacts were allowed in the competition arena. As long as there was a difference in cultivation level, it would be fine. Hong, The cheers were even more earth-shattering. Haha, I really didn't expect the arena to take this kid so seriously. Sending out Siwen for the first battle, Zhao Shuang said with a smile. He looked at Tang Yuan and said, "Do you dare to bet again?" Tang Yuan was also a little cautious. Although Siwen only had 8 consecutive victories, he had 8 consecutive victories more than 30 times. This record was extremely shocking, otherwise he would not be so popular. Moreover, Siwen was a 3rd firmament emperor. With the help of battle armor, his battle strength was naturally a level higher. Even some 4th firmament immortal monarchs were not his match. What, you don't dare? Zhao Shuang provoked. You have no confidence in your subordinates? A spoiled brat like Tang Yuan naturally could not take this. He immediately raised his head and said, "What's there to be afraid of? I'll bet 3 Adumbra immortal flowers." All right. Zhao Shuang laughed. It was just in time to win back the bet he had lost. Tang Yuan, you better pray that this kid can still live. Tang Yuan snorted. It's not certain who will kill who. Let's wait and see. Ha 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 ha. Zhao Shuang laughed. He felt that he was definitely going to win this time. On the other side, the commentator spoke again. After completely igniting the emotions of the audience, he said, "Now, let the battle begin." Ha 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 ha, kid, have you washed your neck? Have you prepared the coffin? Siwen laughed with incomparable arrogance. Do you have any last words? I'm still a very reasonable person. Ling Han smiled and stretched out his right hand. He hooked his finger at Siwen. This provocation immediately caused the people on the stage to go crazy. Many people turned to support Ling Han and started shouting, Li Long, Li Long! You dare to steal my popularity." Siwen was furious. He leaped, and the huge battle armor immediately rushed towards Ling Han. Shua! A sword actually appeared in the battle armor's hand. However, it was not a physical sword, but a sword made of light. This was called a particle sword. Ling Han had heard from Wally that it was a pure energy body. It had terrifying destructive power. In this aspect, it was not inferior to immortal weapons. Moreover, the particle sword was not a physical body, so it was not easy to block. Thus, it was very difficult to deal with. Although Yang Zhishuan had battle armor previously, he did not have equipment like the particle sword. Obviously, it was not as good as Siwen's set. Siwen used the battle armor and the particle sword right from the start. It was obvious that he wanted to end the battle quickly. Ling Han knew a lot about battle armor. This thing had a very strong recovery ability. Either the explosive force was strong enough to destroy it directly, or the battle armor could only be worn down until its energy was exhausted. Otherwise, the side with the battle armor would be invincible. Of course, Ling Han wouldn't choose the latter. He clenched his fists and leaped up to meet Sun's attack. Bang! He was even faster. Although he started later, he arrived first. He punched the chest of the battle armor, and with a wave of his left hand, he hit the right wrist of the battle armor and easily pushed the particle sword away. Siwen was shocked. He did not expect Ling Han to be so fast and powerful. Even with the support of the battle armor, he was not a match for Ling Han's wave. But he immediately sneered, because this armor was different from the past. Recently, he spent a lot of money to upgrade the battle armor. It was not a 3-star battle armor, but a 4-star battle armor. It could support a 4th firmament celestial king in battle. He could not make the battle armor unleash its full power. But from a defensive point of view, even a peak 4th firmament celestial king would not be able to threaten the defense of the battle armor. Thus, he naturally had nothing to worry about. This was a secret that he had never told anyone, because he was ambitious. He wasn't satisfied with just being a sniper. He wanted to become a blood war king once again. This way, every time he fought, the appearance fees he would receive would increase by several times. You want to break my battle armor? You're a fool. Ka ka ka. But before he finished his thought, he heard the sound of the battle armor cracking. It was extremely ear-piercing. Boom, the audience went completely crazy. What did they do? Siwen's battle armor was directly broken by Ling Han's punch. That guy was too barbaric. He tore the battle armor with his bare hands. Heavens! Chapter 2572. Very tragic. Li He revealed a smile that was filled with cruelty. He shook his right hand, and a green snake immediately burrowed out of his sleeve, followed by a centipede and a scorpion. They were all densely packed, and they were all poisonous creatures. In a while, you will be eaten by my treasures bit by bit, Li He said. The flesh of an immortal king is a great tonic, and it will make these treasures grow even faster. Pervert. Ling Han nodded. He had not met a normal person here. Then he would just kill it. There was really nothing to communicate with people who played with poisonous creatures. He flicked his finger, and a sword swept out. Pooh! The green snake was instantly beheaded by the sword chi. If it was only beheaded, the green snake would not die. But Ling Han's sword chi also contained his martial art will. This was a disaster for the green snake, and it immediately exploded its consciousness. With its consciousness shattered, and its physical body shattered, it was definitely dead. Little green. Little green. Li He immediately wailed as if his own son had died, and his tears were about to roll out. He howled for a while, then raised his head, and his eyes were full of ferocity. You dare to kill my treasures, I will make you die without a burial place. Ling Han smiled faintly. You speak as if you are very benevolent. You won't die so easily. Li He charged over. He stretched out his hands, and his hands, which were as thin as charred wood, suddenly lit up and turned golden. They were like two small suns, and it was difficult to open one's eyes and look at them directly. Li He sneered. This was a secret technique that he cultivated. There was the great Tao of metal in the light, and it could pierce the eyes and scratch the senses of divine senses. If one did not know the details, it would be very easy to fall for it. Next, he had a series of moves that guaranteed to take down his opponent cleanly. At that time, he would not let Ling Han die easily. Instead, he would let his treasures eat Ling Han alive. Listening to the other party's wails would make every nerve in his body excited. He was sneering when he suddenly felt an iron fist smashing toward him. What was going on? He was shocked at first, and then he reacted. This was Ling Han counterattacking him. How is that possible? Even under the influence of his secret technique, Ling Han was still able to throw a punch so accurately. However, this thought had only just appeared in his mind when he was already heavily punched in the face. A terrifying power instantly reverberated through his body, and there was also an indescribable will of martial art, making him feel as if he was facing a ninth heaven celestial king, high and mighty. This was not because Ling Han's realm was too high, but because the Tao he cultivated was too majestic. He was clearly only at the third heaven, but he actually gave off the feeling of a ninth heaven immortal king. Bam! After that, he fell heavily to the ground. He felt as if every bone in his body had been shattered into pieces, and he didn't have the slightest bit of strength left to use. Ling Han appeared above his head, looking down at him from above. His face was calm, without the slightest hint of complacency, as if defeating him was nothing out of the ordinary. The difference in strength was too great. How could there be such an abnormal person in this world? Ling Han smiled calmly. I have always been a fair person. I will treat you however you want to treat me. Li He was stunned at first, and then he suddenly came to his senses. To his horror, he discovered that his treasures were all staring at him with ferocious eyes. To be exact, they were staring at his flesh. The flesh of a celestial king was a great tonic for them. No, he had just opened his mouth when a poisonous scorpion had already jumped onto his face. Its two pincers clamped down on his tongue, and with a single scissor, it cut it in half. Then it burrowed into his mouth. As soon as he took the lead, more poisonous creatures entered his mouth. Ugh! Li He let out a muffled groan, and his face instantly began to twitch. Not only were these poisonous creatures eating him raw, but they were also extremely poisonous, causing him to suffer immense pain. This was originally the pain of his defeated opponent, and he would laugh heartily at the side. However, only after exchanging positions did he realize how cruel this was. He swore that if he could escape this calamity, he would definitely kill all the poisonous creatures. Eat him! Eat him! Eat him! The spectators on the stage were seething with excitement. They actually didn't care who the poisonous creatures ate, as long as the scene was bloody enough. Li He was furious and terrified. These spectators had always been cheering for him, But now, they were actually cheering for those poisonous creatures, urging them to quickly eat him. This was unacceptable to him. However, he was even more terrified, because he was really going to be eaten alive by the poisonous creatures, and his soul would disappear from this world. However, under the paralysis of the poison, he couldn't make any sound at all. However, his consciousness was extraordinarily clear, and he could feel every minute detail of pain. This was driving him crazy. All the bones in his body were broken, but his body was still trembling, and even his skin was trembling. It could be seen how much pain he was suffering. Ling Han waved his hand. Pa! He instantly exploded, and those poisonous creatures also turned into powder. Just looking at it made him feel disgusted. No. On the stage, many spectators began to wail in grief. Why did they have to kill Li He so quickly? They should let him be eaten alive. That would be more satisfying. These people booed Ling Han, wishing that they could release another group of poisonous creatures to eat Ling Han, to make up for their disappointment. Ling Han glanced around coldly at these people. The more he interacted with them, the more he understood that they were all crazy. There was no need to have any sympathy for them. It was good that one of them died. If one of them escaped, how much damage could an immortal king cause? After the commentator announced Ling Han's victory, he left the fighting area and went to the lounge at the back of the stage. This time Tang Yuan didn't come with him. After all, he thought of himself as the master. It was okay for him to occasionally reward his subordinates, but he couldn't keep condescending. What if Ling Han became arrogant and looked down on him, the master? Tang Yuan secretly made arrangements. As long as Ling Han won 3 more rounds, he could be crowned King of Blood and challenge Lu Li's King of Blood. Days passed by. This time it was even longer. After more than a month, the opponent for the 8th round was determined. Sima Qing. Sima Qing. When Tang Yuan received the opponent's information, he was surprised. This was because Sima Qing's strength was similar to Li He's. They were both 4th Heaven Immortal Kings, and had won 9 battles in a row in the past. If there was any difference, it was that Sima Qing had won 9 battles in a row more than Li He. However, it was only 2 more times. Li He wasn't a match for Ling Han at all. Even if Sima Qing was slightly stronger than Li He, so what? He could only block a few more moves from Ling Han. This was basically giving Ling Han a victory. Could it be that the arena is deliberately giving face to father? Tang Yuan rubbed his chin. However, Li Long is indeed strong. It's not too much for them to go easy on him. The next day, Ling Han's 8th round began. As expected, when the commentator finished introducing the information of both sides, the stage was filled with boos. Weren't they deliberately going easy on him? Fake competition, fake competition, fake competition. Everyone shouted. If it was a fake competition, then they should all be sentenced to death. Chapter 2573. Sima Qing did not move at all. He was a 4th Heaven Celestial King with a medium build and an ordinary appearance. However, a Celestial King naturally had the demeanor of a Celestial King, and he exuded an astonishing pressure. Even if an ascending origin tier approached him, they would still be forcefully blown apart. Battle begins. The commentator did not dare to keep everyone in suspense, and immediately announced the start of the battle. Sima Qing's hands shook, and a bright light shot into the sky. A halberd appeared in his hands. The body of the halberd was black, but the tip of the halberd was crimson. There was black gas rising from it, and it was as if one could hear the screams of thousands of resentful spirits. Even though the battle area was suppressed by the array formation, preventing the fluctuations of the battle from rushing out, everyone still couldn't help but turn pale. Even the array formation couldn't completely block this sharp whistling sound. Immortal artifact. Heavens! I actually got an immortal artifact. This is the 10,000 ghost halberd that Lord Green Ghost used back then. I take back what I just said. I didn't go easy at all. I definitely didn't. With the suppression of an immortal artifact, Li Long won't even be able to achieve 8 consecutive victories. Everyone cried out in surprise. Many people recognized that the halberd in Sima Qing's hand was an immortal artifact. Moreover, It was a supreme treasured artifact that Green Ghost Immortal King had used before. Although it was impossible for Sima Qing to unleash the full power of the immortal equipment due to his strength, it should at least be at the 5th heavenly layer, right? Is this not enough to suppress Ling Han? Go easy my ass. Zhao Shuang was also crying out in regret. When he found out that Ling Han's 8th opponent was Sima Qing, he had the same thought as Tang Yuan. He thought that the arena was going to go easy on Ling Han, so he decisively refused to bet with Tang Yuan. That was purely giving away money. Who knew there would be such a twist? I should have. Tang Yuan wore a troubled expression. That was an immortal artifact. Furthermore, it was a weapon used by a 9th firmament immortal king in the past. Its might was definitely terrifying. Was it worth it? He was a big shot after all. Why didn't he give him this little bit of face? This time, the odds were against Ling Han. He was filled with hatred. Even though he had won against Zhao Shuang twice, and had even swallowed Ling Han's appearance fee, the amount of money he had spent on Ling Han was even greater. He had thought that by messing up the tournament arena's arrangements, Ling Han would appear in advance and not have to be bribed. He had yet to recover his capital. If Ling Han were to die now, he would definitely suffer a huge loss. Damn it, he muttered. In the field, Sima Qing pointed his halberd at Ling Han and said, "Your mistake was being too high profile, revealing all of your strength in advance. Otherwise, it wouldn't be difficult for you to become the Blood War King with your strength." Ling Han broke into a smile. "Oh, you think I've revealed all my strength?" He looked at the halberd in his opponent's hand, his heart burning. This was a celestial tool, and if he took it and fed it to the divine demon sword, the level of the divine demon sword would definitely advance another level. Immortal metal was rare. One piece was one piece after another. Even if you hid your strength under the suppression of a celestial artifact, everything is useless. Sima Qing said in disdain. He wasn't little Ling Han, but he was too confident in the 10,000 ghost halberd. How could a treasure used by a 9th firmament immortal king not be powerful? Come, Ling Han crooked his finger. So what if it was a celestial tool? It depended on who wielded it. How foolish, Sima Qing humphed. He strode towards Ling Han, but his speed wasn't fast. As his step landed, the celestial tool was awakening, giving Ling Han a great pressure. He had done this on purpose. He wanted to make Ling Han tremble in fear, because he knew that he was no match for Ling Han in a fair battle. Being able to bully and humiliate an elite like this was very satisfying to him. Ling Han's expression was solemn. Though he had pushed the indestructible heaven scroll to the 6th level of the indestructible celestial king body, it still couldn't compare to immortal metal. If he clashed head-on with a celestial tool, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. However, the divine demon sword was one of his trump cards, and he didn't want to reveal it so quickly. Coincidentally, he wanted to try fighting under such adverse circumstances. It should be a great increase to his battle prowess. Pung pung pung. Sima Qing came closer and closer, and the seals on the 10,000 ghosts halberd lit up one by one. Skulls appeared and floated towards Ling Han, opening their mouths to bite. Ling Han punched out. Pung! A skull was immediately shattered by him, but his figure also trembled slightly. These skulls contained a great power, enough to shake him. Moreover, this was only a single skull. More skulls appeared, and charged towards Ling Han to attack him. Ha 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 ha. Under the 10,000 ghosts halberd you're nothing. Sima Qing brandished his halberd and attacked. Though these skulls could pose a threat to Ling Han, if he wanted to truly defeat or even kill Ling Han, he would need to directly attack with a celestial tool. Ling Han stretched out his hand, grabbed a large path, and smashed it towards Sima Qing. This was unreasonable, directly using brute force to suppress. Sima Qing knew that there was a great difference in strength between him and Ling Han. If they exchanged injuries, then even if the 10,000 ghosts halberd could kill Ling Han, he would definitely die if he took a blow from Ling Han. Thus he had to parry. He brandished the 10,000 ghosts halberd to meet the attack. Pung! The celestial tool slammed into the path, causing spatial ripples to erupt. Sima Qing felt his arms tremble, and if it were not for the fact that the 10,000 ghosts halberd had been awakened, dispelling the majority of Ling Han's power. This attack would definitely be countless times more terrifying, causing his heart to tremble. Just how powerful was this man? But now he evidently could not retreat. Otherwise, even if Ling Han was willing to let him go, he would still be dealt with by the people of the Colosseum. Oh, I've already given you a celestial tool, and you actually shamefully surrender and beg for mercy. Die! He roared, and his celestial king power surged. Streaks of azure blades appeared on the 10,000 Ghosts halberd. He had poured his own power into the celestial tool, further stimulating its power. Otherwise, he did not think that his strength could pose any threat to Ling Han. Who can you kill? Ling Han smirked coldly. He used his own Dao, moving as smoothly as flowing water. Even though Sima Qing had an celestial tool, he was still struggling. It was not that the 10,000 Ghosts halberd was not strong, but that Sima Qing was too weak, and could not fully unleash the power of an celestial tool. As so strange. Li Long is clearly only a third heaven celestial king, but why do I have a feeling that he is a supreme king of the ninth heaven? I have that feeling too. Me too. Everyone on the stage exclaimed. They were crazy, but they were all genuine celestial kings. None of them were ordinary people. His cultivation cannot be faked. Then there is only one possibility. This brat has comprehended his own Dao. What a rare talent. Sima Qing did his best, but the difference in strength was too great. No matter how hard he tried, it was useless, and he was quickly suppressed. All sorts of laws were easily manipulated by Ling Han, making Sima Qing feel extremely uncomfortable. If it was not for the fact that the celestial tool in his hand could break through all laws, he would not have been able to withstand 3 punches and 2 kicks from Ling Han. But the problem now was how long he could last. It was impossible for him to turn the tables, unless the 10,000 Ghosts halberd could unleash its full power. But that was definitely not realistic. Sima Qing did not dare to continue fighting, and he started to retreat. Fighting until now was enough to prove that he had given it his all, and there was no possibility of him going easy on Ling Han. If this continued, he believed that he would be smashed into pieces by Ling Han. He tried to escape, but Ling Han had already entered an optimal state. The laws had turned into chains, firmly trapping him. Chapter 2574. After a few hundred moves, Sima Qing fell down helplessly. He wanted to run, yet he didn't succeed. At present, Ling Han had already formed his own path. In fact, his cultivation level was even higher than that of many ninth heaven celestial kings. As long as one was weaker than him, it would be impossible for them to escape his encirclement. The 10,000 Ghosts halberd lay quietly on the ground. Even though it wasn't in a state of recovery, it still gave people a terrible pressure. Ling Han wanted to pick it up, but before he could touch it, the halberd glowed on its own. Runes flashed and emitted a level 9 celestial might. Without someone controlling it, the halberd was even more terrifying. Ling Han sighed. With his current strength, he was still unable to refine a ninth heaven level celestial tool. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the divine demon sword refining the 10,000 Ghosts halberd. Rather, it would be him being blasted into smithereens by the 10,000 Ghosts halberd. What a pity. It was so hard to get a celestial weapon. Ling Han was very depressed, and it showed on his face. Fuck, he won such a difficult battle, and still had such an expression? He was asking for a beating. Many people thought Ling Han was being pretentious, but on the other hand, anyone with such strength could also be pretentious, right? After this battle, Ling Han would really become famous. He had a celestial weapon, and was of a higher level, but he still couldn't suppress Li Long. How powerful was he? If we want to stop Li Long from reaching the top, we have to send out the Blood War King. Normal Blood War King can't do that either. But it has to be a Blood War King with more than 20 wins. 20 wins? Do you think it's easy? The Blood War King's 20 wins are all from other Blood War Kings, and he can't keep winning against the same opponents. Plus, if he loses, he'll lose his wins. At most, we can send out Blood War King with 7 or 8 wins. Everyone discussed spiritedly, and began to discuss Ling Han's next opponent. Who exactly could stop Ling Han from becoming the new Blood War King? This battle was really too glorious. Even Tang Yuan was extremely excited. He once again held a wine party for Ling Han. Now, as long as he had 2 more victories, Ling Han would be able to become the Blood War King. He was so close to getting his revenge on Luli. Just the thought of it made him excited. The 9th match came even later. It took a full 3 months before Ling Han's opponent could be chosen. After that, the arena carried out a lot of publicity, attracting countless people. It was hard to get a ticket, which was enough to prove the level of attention this battle received. However, the identity of Ling Han's new opponent had yet to be revealed. Even Tang Yuan had yet to find out, so it would only be revealed when the time came. With Tang Yuan in the lead, the group arrived at the arena. Tang Yuan made an exception and went to the backstage resting room to cheer up Ling Han. He was looking forward to another great victory later. When the time was up, Tang Yuan was invited out. Even a spoiled brat like him didn't dare to affect the operation of the arena. Ling Han stepped onto the stage and quietly waited for his opponent to appear. As usual, the commentator introduced Ling Han's identity, spittle flying everywhere as he spoke passionately. Everyone cheered out of respect, but it didn't take long for this excitement to pass. They were all looking forward to Ling Han's opponent. Who was this opponent? Everyone really wanted to know. Now, everyone must be looking forward to seeing Li Long's opponent. The commentator paused for a moment and looked around. Seeing everyone's impatient expression, he finally revealed the answer. Perhaps everyone has already guessed that this is a Blood War King. This was indeed what everyone had expected, but they still cheered. They were also looking forward to seeing who this Blood War King was. He is Neo Air. It was a funny name, but not only did the crowd not laugh, they even cheered loudly. Neo Air, a prodigy of the Herculean Iron Bull clan. He became a Blood War King more than 1,000,000 years ago, and now has 32 victories. The commentator was also working hard, and then he began to count Neo Air's victories. Of course, this was the battle where he became a Blood War King. 32 victories was not a lot, and it took him more than 1,000,000 years to achieve such a result. It seemed like his battle strength was not that great, but that was not the case. This was a net victory, which meant that he had more than a 50% chance of winning against other Blood War Kings. More importantly, he liked to fight without any restrictions, so he rarely fought in the arena. Otherwise, his victories would be far more than this number. This time, the arena had also paid a huge price to invite him back, to snipe Ling Han and ascend to the top. Let us, with the warmest cheers, invite out our Blood War King warrior Neo Air. Hua! The cheers shook the heavens and the earth. Most of the audience here were celestial kings, and they were all shouting at the same time. It was a spectacular scene. Neo Air appeared. Ling Han walked over, and he couldn't help but have a strange expression. It was an extremely burly man, at least 3 meters tall. Only his body was like a human's, and his head was a bull's head. His hands were bull's hooves, and there was a long tail behind his butt. His entire body was black. The difference was that there was only 1 bull's horn on his head, not 2. As the commentator had said before, this was not a human, but a foreign race. It was just that he was now in human form. Neo Air strode forward, carrying a large saber in his hand. This was not an immortal artifact, but was made of subimmortal gold. It was sharp and strong enough that he could fight for hundreds of years before needing to repair it. Get lost. Neo Air raised his saber and pointed at the commentator. Otherwise, this old bull will kill you. The commentator didn't dare to let out a fart, and immediately shut his mouth obediently. You are the person who has been making a lot of noise recently. Neo Air withdrew his saber and looked at Ling Han with a fierce gaze. However, you are far from being as tall and mighty as this old bull thinks. Ling Han, on the other hand, stared at Neo Air, his eyes burning. Kid, what do you mean by staring at this old bull like this? Neo Air asked unhappily. Ling Han smiled and said, which parts of you are suitable for making skewers, and which parts are suitable for braising and steaming? Neo Air was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. Did this human celestial king actually think of him as an animal waiting to be slaughtered? I am from the Herculean Iron Bull clan, not a water buffalo. Damn brat. This old bull is going to kill you. Neo Air roared. He waved the butcher's saber and attacked Ling Han with a jump chop. Bang! With a loud bang, there was a huge pit in the ground, and gray smoke filled the air. Neo Air withdrew his saber, and his eyes captured Ling Han's movements. You didn't let this old bull down, you do have some strength. Ling Han had already retreated 100 feet, which was just the limit of this huge pit. If he moved even half an inch further, he would step on the ground with his toes. Neo Air grinned, but in his heart he was no longer careless. It was not surprising that Ling Han could dodge this saber. The key was that the distance he retreated was too precise, as if he had an incomparable understanding of his strength. They had only met for the first time, but Ling Han was able to make such a reaction. His eyesight was frightening. Such an opponent could not be underestimated. As a beef kebab, you talk a little too much. Ling Han smiled. He tapped his foot and rushed towards Neo Air. You human junior! Neo Air was so angry that smoke was coming out of his nostrils. This kid really thought of himself as an ingredient. He shouted loudly and brandished his large saber in a slash at Ling Han. Boom boom boom. Being able to have such a fierce reputation, and even being invited by the arena to snipe Ling Han, Neo Air's strength was amazing, and his saber light was amazing. If it weren't for the powerful restrictions here, perhaps the stars in the sky would have been swept down by the saber chi. Chapter 2576. Sister Ling, do you know who Li Long's opponent is? Tang Yuan couldn't help but ask. Young Xiaoling was ranked in the top 3 among the spoiled brats. He didn't have the face to inquire about the information, but Yang Xiaoling might be able to. He was really curious, so he couldn't help but ask. Don't worry, it's just a nobody. Yang Xiaoling opened her red lips lightly. Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang were both surprised. The 9th opponent was a terrifying opponent like Neo Air, and the 10th was actually a nobody. Impossible, right? Yang Xiaoling smiled faintly and said, that kid has already proven his strength. Moreover, I've specially asked someone to take care of him. Don't tell me you won't even give me this little bit of face? Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang both understood. If Ling Han was just a nobody, then the arena naturally wouldn't go easy on him. However, Ling Han's previous 9 battles, especially the 9th battle, had completely proved his strength, so there really wasn't a need to send any extraordinary powerhouses for the 10th battle. The arena only limited the number of King of Blood War to ensure the glory of this title. It wasn't that they were trying their best to prevent people from obtaining this title. Tang Yuan was completely relieved, and Zhao Shuang naturally had no interest in gambling with Tang Yuan. The commentator was still excitedly introducing Ling Han's identity. Even if Ling Han was very famous now, in fact, there weren't many people who had actually seen him, so there were still a lot of screams. Ling Han remained calm and waited for his opponent to appear. This time, Li Long's opponent is Ma Yi. Before the commentator finished speaking, there was a sudden commotion in the arena's passageway. Peng, a figure flew out, but with a thud, he landed solidly on the ground. Obviously, it wasn't that person who jumped out by himself, because his face had been hit solidly, and half of his face had collapsed. This was a 4th heaven immortal king, but now the brilliance on his body was faintly discernible, which meant that his fire of life was also on the verge of collapse. The commentator was shocked, because this was Ling Han's opponent, but now he was beaten to the point of death. How could he fight against Ling Han? Moreover, who actually dared to act so impudently in the arena? Did they not know that this was the territory of the Green Ghost Immortal King? Peng, another figure shot out. It was a burly man about 3 meters tall, but he had the head of an ox, the hooves of an ox, the tail of an ox, and a single horn on his head. Who else could it be but Neo Air? Ling Han was taken aback. He wanted to open the spatial fairy artifact to see if Neo Air's body was still there. That's not right. I just ate scallion beef with the girls yesterday. You're the one who killed my brother. The man glared at Ling Han, his gaze incomparably fierce. Oh, so this is Neo Air's older brother. Could he be called Neoda? Ling Han nodded. It's not bad, but it's a little old. The burly man exploded with rage. White gas spurted out of his nostrils, and directly touched the ground, but actually blasted out 2 holes in the ground. This was extremely shocking. One had to know that the bricks and stones of the arena were all incomparably sturdy and could withstand a battle between celestial kings. However, just 2 puffs of air from his nostrils were enough to create 2 holes in the ground. This was too terrifying. Nyoda, the commentator finally spoke. His voice was even trembling, because there were too many legends regarding Nyoda in the arena. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. This guy was really called Nyoda Boom. The entire arena went crazy. Almost 90% of the people stood up and loudly cheered. And the target was Nyoda, as if he was an invincible warrior. Nyoda, the arena has the rules of the arena. I can understand that you want to take revenge for your brother. In the future, you can challenge him, but you can't break the rules. Otherwise, you'll be even more miserable, the commentator said. Although his heart was in a mess, this was too against the rules, so he had to say it. Nyoda's large eyes glared, and he said coldly, "Since you know that I want to take revenge for my brother, you better shut up. Otherwise, not only will I kill you, I'll also kill your 3 concubines, 2 sons and 6 daughters." The commentator's body trembled, and he revealed an expression of incomparable terror. Nyoda was even more terrifying than Nyo Air. It wasn't just because his cultivation was higher, his talent was better, and his strength was greater. It was also because he was even more vicious and merciless. It was one thing for others to kill the person in question, but Nyoda would also drag out the people related to the person in question and kill them one by one in front of the person in question. This was how Nyoda's illustrious reputation had been forged. It was as if the night could stop children from crying. But if Nyoda really did something reckless, the commentator would not be able to escape responsibility. Just as the commentator was about to summon up his courage and try to persuade Nyoda again, he suddenly froze. He had received a divine sense transmission. He immediately revealed a respectful expression, and at the same time he relaxed. Since this lord had spoken, there was no need to be afraid, even if the sky collapsed. After a while he said, "I just received Lord Enhe's instructions." Lord Enhe said that in consideration of Nyoda's pain in losing his brother, he specially allowed him to fight. Instantly, the entire arena was in an uproar. How could it be like this? Although Nyoda hadn't revealed his cultivation, everyone on the stage knew very well that Nyoda was a celestial king of the 5th heaven, and he was also an imperial star. According to the rules of the arena, only a gap of 1 heaven was allowed in a sniper battle. Now that Nyoda was 2 heavens higher than Ling Han, and he was also an imperial star, his battle prowess had soared to the 7th heaven. Wasn't this clearly bullying? But the person who had spoken was Een River Deity King. Unless Green Ghost Deity King spoke, no one could change this result. Because Een River Deity King was the disciple of Green Ghost Deity King, and he was also the only disciple. Moreover, his cultivation was at the 7th heaven, and he could be said to be the number 1 among the profligates. On the stage, Tang Yuan, Zhao Shuang, and Yang Xiaoling were all stunned, and it also made them feel helpless. Whether it was in terms of the strength of their fathers or their own battle prowess, they were far inferior to Een River Deity King. Other than accepting it, they had no other choice. Ha 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 ha. With a long laugh, Luli appeared, still followed by Ape. He had a sword by his waist, and his hand was on the hilt, as if he could draw it at any time. "Luli," Tang Yuan said, clenching his teeth. He was in a bad mood. No matter how much he thought highly of Ling Han, he knew that this time, Ling Han was doomed, and a dead man was not worth his effort. At this moment, the last thing he wanted was to be Luli, who would pour salt on his wounds. "Piss off, I didn't think of you," Tang Yuan said. Luli sneered. "Tang Yuan, I came here to laugh at you. Why do you think it is so difficult to fight for the title of Blood War King? Are you the one behind all this?" Tang Yuan asked in shock. He did have this speculation, but he didn't think that Luli was so capable. "Who else could it be but me?" Luli laughed out loud. "Impossible, impossible, you can't do it." Tang Yuan was in a panic. If what Luli said was true, then the power Luli possessed was too shocking. Luli sneered. "Tang Yuan, What makes you think you can fight with me? I will give you a chance. Come on, kneel down and lick my boots, and I will take you in as my follower. Tang Yuan naturally could not lose face. His father was a ninth heaven immortal king after all. He just didn't understand how Lu Li could have such amazing power all of a sudden. Chapter 2577. One must know that it wasn't as simple as affecting the arrangement of the arena's personnel. It even made the Yin River Immortal Monarch make an appearance. It was truly shocking. Lu Li, you're really something now, Yang Xiaoling said with a sneer. She was sitting right there, but Lu Li didn't salute her respectfully. He acted as if he didn't see her. He was too bold. Yang Xiaoling, do you want to go to bed with me? Lu Li looked at Yang Xiaoling and glanced at her chest, butt and legs. He didn't hide his desire at all. Tonight, I will give you the chance. Yang Xiaoling's face turned cold. She liked to play with men, but she was the one who took the initiative. No man had ever treated her like a plaything. Who was Lu Li to be so presumptuous in front of her? Tang Yuan couldn't help but sneer. Lu Li was getting carried away. He even dared to tease Yang Xiaoling. Didn't he know how cruel this spider was? Serves him right for courting death. You're asking for it. Yang Xiaoling reached out to grab Lu Li. She was a level 4 immortal king, and Lu Li was only at level 2. The difference was like heaven and earth. This was not something Lu Li could resist. Swish! A flash of sword light lit up the sky. Yang Xiaoling immediately retreated. She lowered her head in shock, and saw that there was a wound on her left chest. Blood was gushing out, and the wound was so deep that her bones could be seen. If it was any deeper, her heart would have been destroyed. She looked up and saw a young man standing in front of Lu Li. He was slowly sheathing his sword. Blood was dripping down the tip of the sword. This was A Yuan. He had made a timely move just now. Not only did he protect Lu Li, but he also injured Yang Xiaoling. He was only a level 3 immortal king, but he could injure a level 4 immortal king. Lu Li laughed and said, Sister Ling, just come to my bed. My kung fu is pretty good in that area. I promise you will feel great. Yang Xiaoling's pretty face was gloomy. She was shocked by Ape's power, but what confused her more was Lu Li's boldness. Not only did he not panic when his men hurt her, he even dared to ridicule and even humiliate her. What was he relying on? Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang couldn't understand either, but they were sure that Lu Li wasn't an idiot. He wouldn't go crazy for no reason. Sister Ling, trust me. You will climb into my bed and enjoy yourself under me. Lu Li teased Yang Xiaoling again, but after saying this, he turned to Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan, you're the same. This young master can make a bet with you. You'll run to this young master's mansion, kneel before this young master, and beg this young master to accept you as his little brother. Even though Tang Yuan's mind was in turmoil, he was still enraged by Lu Li's words. He said, Lu Li, are you out of your mind? If I surrender to you, then I might as well be a woman. Lu Li put on an evil smile and sat down. Let's sit down and watch the show. I want to see how this punk who dares to disobey me will be cut into pieces. Although Tang Yuan and the other two were extremely displeased, Ape's expressionless face made them completely lose their temper. They couldn't do anything to Lu Li unless they asked a powerful master to suppress Ape. The three of them also sat down angrily. As they watched the scene, they thought to themselves that they would investigate Lu Li when they got back. Why did he suddenly become so bold? What kind of background did he have? While they were having different feelings, the battle between Ling Han and Nyoda was about to begin. Pretty boy of the human race, I will not let you die so easily, Nyoda said in a stern voice. Before anyone related to you dies, I will let you live. I will watch these people die one by one in front of you. Ling Han was not moved. All the girls were in the fairy artifact of space. It didn't matter if all the others died. Therefore, as long as he was fine, the girls would be fine as well. He had nothing to worry about. He cracked a smile and said, I have to thank you. Thank himself. Nyoda didn't expect that Ling Han would suddenly say something like this. He was stunned for a moment before he said, Thank me for killing you. I'm almost finished with the beef. You really came at the right time, Ling Han said with a smile. He looked at Nyoda with a picky gaze. This was a gaze that was picking ingredients. Nyoda couldn't help but fly into a rage. This brat ate his little brother, and now treated him as prey. "You are my prey," he roared. He couldn't help but attack. Xiao. A silver light smashed toward Ling Han. He was a level 5 Imperial Star. His strength was many times greater than Nyo Air's. His vitality had soared to 10,000, even nearing the height of 11,000. Even Ling Han wouldn't be a match for him. Ling Han's figure flashed, and he dodged the silver light. Bang! The silver light smashed into the wall at the edge of the arena. It was embedded in the wall, but it still left a tail outside. This was a silver bracelet. It was made of some unknown material, but it was frighteningly hard. Come! Nyoda grabbed at the air at the bracelet. Xiao! The bracelet immediately flew back and landed in his hoof. Flames of fury burned in Ling Han's heart. He didn't fear Nyoda, but Nyoda's appearance was clearly against the rules. Why should he suffer like this? He loudly said, "I want to change opponents." According to the rules of the arena, he had the right to change opponents 3 times. After using this right, his winning streak would be nullified, and he would have to start from the beginning. Nyoda naturally didn't care. He once again swung the bracelet at Ling Han. The commentator was startled. Ling Han's request was reasonable, but Nyoda's appearance had already broken the rules. However, he had obtained the support of the Ain River Celestial King. This couldn't be judged by logic. Was he going to speak or not? Just at that moment, he heard the voice again, giving him a command. He immediately obeyed and said loudly, "Lord Ain River said that the battle must continue. This battle must end with death." What? Even if this arena was named Death, there was still a chance of survival. That was, as long as one escaped into the tunnel of life, the other side wouldn't be able to pursue him. Of course, if one went out, they could still fight and kill. This was a lawless place. But in the territory of Green Ghost Celestial King, if he told you to follow the rules, you had to follow the rules. This was the dignity of a Celestial King. Now it actually had to end with the death of one side. There was no need to think. If they fought to the death, it would definitely be Ling Han who would die. Wasn't this clearly asking for Ling Han's death? When Ling Han heard this, he couldn't help but sneer. This was really going too far. His killing intent boiled as he looked at Nyoda. Even if Nyoda's cultivation was higher, and his battle prowess surpassed Ling Han's, his heart still pounded from this glance, and he felt a chill. But he immediately suppressed it. This was the enemy who killed his brother, and he definitely had to kill him. Human scum, what's the use of glaring at me? You can't change your destiny of death. He waved the silver bracelet, and the bracelet immediately grew larger, turning into a ring with a diameter of 4 feet. He waved the silver ring, and smashed it down at Ling Han's head. Chapter 2578. Ling Han's expression darkened, and he exploded with rage. He did not mind the strength of his opponent, but he could not tolerate the unfairness. If Nyoda blocked his path on the streets, and wanted to avenge his brother's death, he would gladly accept the challenge. But here, the opponent was obviously bullying him. This caused Ling Han to be enraged. He coiled the rule energy around his fists, and met the silver rings head-on. Did the opponent really think that he did not dare to fight? Boom! His fists collided with the silver rings, instantly causing a series of shockwaves that rippled out in all directions. Tung tung tung. Ling Han and Nyoda retreated at the same time. Thud thud thud. Fresh blood continuously dripped from his fists. Ling Han, however, did not even glance at it. His physique had only reached the 6th level. Even with the rule energy, it was still very difficult for it to reach the 7th level. Hence, when he collided with the silver rings, his skin broke, and his flesh split open. Fresh blood flowed out. Nyoda was astonished. Could this human be his relative? How could his physique be so powerful? One must know that he was from the Steel Bull race. His skin was as tough as steel, possessing shocking defensive abilities. Luckily, under the bombardment of the Astral Fiend rings, Ling Han was still not his match and was injured. As long as he maintained the high pressure, he could completely smash every single bone in Ling Han's body into pieces. Again. Nyoda rushed out once again. He waved the silver rings. forming a series of shockwaves that caused even the air to explode as they rushed towards Ling Han. Wung wung wung, the shockwaves arrived, causing Ling Han's skin to undulate. It was as if there was wind blowing on the surface of the water. Nyoda also rushed over, waving the silver rings and slapping them towards Ling Han. In such a hurry, do you want to be fried or steamed? Ling Han said coldly. He unleashed his own Dao and punched out with both fists, clashing with Nyoda. Although his fists were constantly injured, the indestructible Immortal King physique possessed extremely powerful recovery abilities. The indestructible true fluid had even turned into mist and filled his body. There was no need for Ling Han to circulate it. Therefore, although he was constantly injured, his recovery speed was not slow, allowing him to maintain a strong state. Nyoda was shocked. Why was this human so hard to kill? He finally knew that it was not enough to kill Ling Han with just one weapon. It was no wonder that his younger brother died at his hands. Indeed, this person was incomparably monstrous. You're worthy of me bringing out even more of my strength. Nyoda laughed maniacally. His single horn lit up, and a powerful energy surged out of his body, causing the space around him to collapse. Strange distortions appeared in the light. Their tribe's power was all in the horn. Ha 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 ha, I'll flatten you. He attacked again, brandishing his silver rings. At his level of strength, he didn't need any techniques at all. All he needed was brute force to suppress his opponent. Ling Han remained unmoved. He grabbed a path with both hands and smashed it towards Nyoda. When the two of them clashed, Nyoda still had the upper hand. He originally had a stronger battle strength. Now that he had activated his race's innate ability, he naturally became even stronger. His attacks forced Ling Han to retreat repeatedly. The skin on his body continuously split open, and fresh blood splattered everywhere. There was a huge commotion on the stage, and everyone was screaming. They were indeed shocked that the arena didn't follow the rules. But once the battle started, they no longer cared about it. They sympathized with Ling Han. Who cared? They only thought about blood and slaughter. As for whether it was fair or not, what did that have to do with them? Kill him. Smash him to death. Skin him and dig out his heart. Some people had extremely heavy tastes. Not only did they want Nyoda to kill Ling Han, they even wanted to use all sorts of methods, which were extremely cruel. Nyoda laughed out loud. Did you hear everyone's cries? Human, stop your pointless resistance and hand over your life obediently. Ling Han swept his eyes over the stage. Though he had long since known that the people here were all lunatics, the behavior of these people still gave him a shock. He didn't reply. He merely took out a piece of red cloth and waved it in front of Nyoda. Fuck. Do you think I'm immortal, Niao? Nyoda couldn't help but explode with rage. He had long since developed intelligence, and he was even smarter than the majority of humans. You actually took out a piece of red cloth? What kind of mockery was this? You're courting death. Nyoda poured his silver hoop into it. Wung. The silver hoop emitted an astonishing light, and it seemed to transform into a sun. He suddenly puffed out his cheeks and blew at Ling Han. Instantly, a large wave of flames was spat out, burning towards Ling Han. Ling Han calmly responded. His enemy was powerful, and he even seemed to be able to suppress him. However, it was precisely in such a situation that he was even calmer and more composed. He unleashed his own Dao, and his defense was extremely perfect. He was still injured, but his performance had shocked everyone. After all, he was only a third heaven immortal king, 2 realms lower than Nyoda. What was more, Nyoda was the imperial star. Theoretically speaking, this was a gap that could not be bridged. However, the two of them had exchanged over 1,000 moves, and Ling Han was only bleeding all over. He didn't lose any limbs. He was still able to fight. This was a miracle. On the stage, Tang Yuan and the other two were cheering for Ling Han. They were being suppressed by Lu Li. If Ling Han could survive, then they would have defeated Lu Li in another round. Lu Li, on the other hand, was surprised. He couldn't help but look at Ape. Ling Han's abilities reminded Lu Li of Ape. Ape was also a freak that could defeat enemies of higher realms. Was Ape as strong as Ling Han? Lu Li didn't know. He was not sure. But it didn't matter. This was a fight to the death. Even if it went on for 10 years, it would end with the death of one party. Ling Han was fighting a bloody battle. Even though he was constantly injured, his spirit, energy and spirit had reached a new height. He had to fight such a powerful enemy, without any help. The blade of death was hanging over his head. This forced him to dig out every bit of his potential. On the stage, the cheers were all for Nyoda. They couldn't wait for Ling Han to be killed. It would be best if his head was smashed, and his body was reduced to a rain of blood. The more miserable the better. Ling Han was fighting alone. It was as if he was fighting against the entire world. He was extremely lonely, but his eyes were glowing. He was a stubborn person. The more he was like this, the stronger his fighting spirit was, and the stronger his spirit was. He wanted to rise up and slap everyone in the face. Nyoda became crazy as well. The cheers were so infectious that his eyes turned red. He longed for Ling Han's blood. Die, die, die. Nyoda waved his arms. Whoosh, a ray of death shot out from his horn. Even a ninth heaven immortal king would be severely injured if they were not on guard. Ling Han stepped on the regulations of space and dodged this ray of death. He was preparing his counterattack. And if he didn't attack, it would definitely be an earth-shattering attack. The enemy was strong while he was weak. He had to succeed with a single strike. Otherwise, the battle would definitely drag on endlessly. Nyoda used his full battle prowess, and even used his death ray. He didn't hold anything back. He wanted to use his most powerful attack to crush Ling Han and kill him in one go. Ling Han was calm and composed. Suddenly, his eyes became serious, and his fighting spirit soared into the sky. He moved. The great Tao of time surged. Suddenly, Nyoda's figure froze. However, Nyoda was too powerful. Even the regulations of time couldn't trap him. He immediately regained his freedom. But in an instant, Ling Han also charged over and appeared in front of him. The divine demon sword was already prepared to drink blood. Chapter 2580. When the newcomer said this, everyone had a strange expression on their faces. Yang Xiaoling had indeed fulfilled her promise and made a move on Ling Han. Ling Han still didn't know who Yang Xiaoling was, so he couldn't help but ask Tang Yuan, "Who is Yang Xiaoling?" Tang Yuan patted Ling Han's shoulder. "You'll know when you get there. However, let me remind you first, Sister Ling's temper is even worse than mine. You must not anger her, or else you'll definitely not have a good time." Although Ling Han wasn't afraid, he was secretly surprised. It seemed that this Yang Xiaoling was even more powerful than Tang Yuan. So if she said she wanted someone, she would definitely want him. He was curious, so he nodded and followed the newcomer. Very soon they arrived at another courtyard. The newcomer continuously led the way, bringing Ling Han to a huge hall. This should be a bathroom, because there was a huge bath on the ground, which took up 80% of the entire room. The bath was filled with hot water, and steam rose from it. Flower petals floated on the surface of the water, gently swaying with the waves. A woman was sitting in the bath, and two maids were washing her hair. Her long black hair hung down to her waist, and now it was swaying with the waves like water plants. This person's back was facing Ling Han, so Ling Han could only see her snow-white back. There was a flower tattoo on it, but Ling Han couldn't tell what species it was, because he hadn't been in this plane for long. Reporting to Lady Ling, Li Long is here. The newcomer knelt on the ground, her eyes lowered, not daring to look around. You may leave, the woman with her back facing him said, her voice charming to the bone. Yes. The newcomer immediately retreated, as if relieved of a heavy burden. Voila! The sound of water rose, and the woman turned around, revealing a bewitching and enchanting face. She did not mind letting Ling Han see the beautiful sight of her chest. Not only did she not cover it up, she even puffed out her chest, making it look even more perky. Am I beautiful? She asked. This woman, of course, was Yang Xiaoling. Ling Han gave a carefree smile and said, very beautiful. This was his honest opinion. She was indeed very beautiful. Although she couldn't reach the level of the Empress, she could still be considered an outstanding beauty. Especially that kind of seductive beauty that was tinged with thorns. It was really tempting. Of course, this definitely wouldn't move his heart. Yang Xiaoling laughed out loud, looking wild and unrestrained. She crooked her finger at Ling Han and said, Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and come over. Aren't you a man? Although she said such bold words, the two maids pretended not to hear it. Their expressions did not change, and they continued to do their own things. Ling Han shook his head. Sorry, I already have a wife. So what? Yang Xiaoling continued to laugh unrestrainedly. Do you think that I would want to be with you forever? You're thinking too much. You're too full of yourself. I just want to play with you. Ling Han was astonished. This woman actually liked to play with men. Men could play with women, but why couldn't women with power and ability play with men? Not to mention in such a godforsaken place? This had nothing to do with him. If I don't comply, are you going to force me? Ling Han laughed. Yang Xiaoling laughed. Do you think that only men can force women? Wrong, wrong. Although you are a newly advanced blood war monarch, and have extremely powerful combat strength, you are only at the 3rd firmament. Can you beat a 7th or 8th firmament immortal king? My father is a 9th firmament immortal king. As long as he makes a move, he can instantly kill you. In the face of death, will you comply or not? Ling Han smiled. He would control his temper here, but he would definitely not throw away his bottom line. She wanted him to sleep with other women just to save his life, and to play the role of being played with? That was impossible. He shook his head. Miss Yang, I think you should find someone else. I'm not interested. He turned and left. Stop. Yang Xiaoling suddenly stood up. Voila. The sound of water splashing could be heard. She pointed a finger at Ling Han and said, If you dare to walk out of this door, I guarantee that you will die a tragic death. Ling Han pretended not to hear her. His footsteps were as smooth as flowing water. Come. Report. Yang Xiaoling was just about to speak when she saw an immortal king suddenly push open the door and kneel on the ground, interrupting her. What is it? She asked impatiently. Lord Yang Ke summons you. The immortal king said. Yang Xiaoling's face paled, and fear flashed in her eyes. She paused for at least a breath's time before saying, I understand. The immortal king waited for a moment, then said, Lord said that Miss should put down everything and go immediately. Yang Xiaoling took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I said, I understand. The immortal king did not continue speaking, but he still knelt on the ground. Clearly, if Yang Xiaoling did not move, he would continue kneeling there. Get changed. Yang Xiaoling stretched out her hands, and 2 maidservants hurriedly brought clothes for her. Go. She snorted and glared at the immortal king. She was just short of kicking him. Ling Han vaguely heard some of it, but naturally, he did not take it to heart. He returned to Tang Yuan's courtyard because he wanted to get a rising dragon pill and study what it was made of. Hey, how come you're back so soon? Tang Yuan was full of surprise when he saw Ling Han. After all, a man who had been toyed with by that poisonous spider would not have the strength to stand up without lying in bed for a year and a half. He had already mentally prepared himself to get Ling Han back and let him rest for 8 to 10 years before challenging Lu Li's king of blood war. But Ling Han actually walked back on his own. This was really shocking. Ling Han just smiled and said, Where's the rising dragon pill? Tang Yuan immediately frowned. He was very unhappy with Ling Han's words. Who did he think he was to speak to him in such a tone? Li Long, do you think that you can look down on young Master Tang just because you've become the king of blood war? Luo Yang immediately jumped out and pointed at Ling Han. Tui, in front of young Master Tang, you're not even worth a fart. Hurry up and kneel. Beg young Master Tang to let you go. Ling Han walked towards Luo Yang and said, Come on, you've really forgotten the pain now that the scar has healed. Do you want to die? Li Long, you're too arrogant. Luo Yang said coldly. He didn't mind adding oil to the fire and causing Ling Han to completely fall out with Tang Yuan. Try saying that again, Ling Han said with a smile. You ignorant fool. Bang! Ling Han attacked and blew Luo Yang's head off with one punch. The headless body was still pointing at him. It looked a bit funny, but also very strange. Luo Yang had provoked him again and again. Did he think he was easy to bully? Fresh blood splattered on Tang Yuan's body, causing him to shiver. He felt as if he was in a dream. Ling Han actually dared to kill someone in front of him. Moreover, That person was his little brother, and the son of a seventh heaven immortal king. Had the world gone mad? First there was Yuan, and now there was Ling Han. They didn't even take them, the second-generation ancestors, seriously. I recommend a good book from a friend, Qidian Ga Changfeng. Latest masterpiece, The War of Resistance Against War. Qidian link. Friends who like to read on QQ can search for the book's title. Students who like to read on the War of Resistance Against War, don't miss it. A hot-blooded military novel is incomparably refreshing. Chapter 2581. Tang Yuan stared at Ling Han, his eyes full of anger. He couldn't imagine that a subordinate would dare to disobey his orders and turn against him without hesitation. Did he eat the guts of a ninth heaven immortal king? He said coldly, Li Long, do you know what you're doing? Bam! He was punched in the face. The person who punched him was of course Ling Han. Tang Yuan was enraged, but before he could say anything, a large hand had already grabbed his neck and held him tightly, even causing his bones to make cracking sounds. A terrifying martial will trembled, causing him to become extremely weak. He couldn't even breathe, and his chest felt extremely stuffy, as if he might really suffocate to death. He felt an endless chill. Ling Han was really going to kill him, he really was. Ling Han smiled faintly. Don't be mistaken. I've never been your subordinate. Listen, I can continue to go to the arena, and I don't need an appearance fee, but don't disturb me. Otherwise you'll end up like Luo Yang. With that he retracted his hand. Tang Yuan was angry, furious and shocked. Ling Han actually dared to threaten him? How dare he? How could he? One had to realize that a ninth heaven celestial king was standing behind him. No matter how freakish Ling Han was, how could he possibly become an enemy of a ninth heaven celestial king? As long as his father moved, he would be able to casually blast Ling Han into pieces. To say nothing of anything else, merely Luo Yang's father, a seventh heaven celestial king, would be able to beat the crap out of Ling Han. He definitely couldn't cross this threshold, but he dared to be so presumptuous in front of him, asking for conditions. Fuck, what was wrong with this person's brain? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but think of Yuan. This person killed one of his subordinates, who was also a seventh heaven immortal king's descendant, and even injured Yang Shaoling. Why was he completely fine? Even if those two big shots wouldn't touch Lu Li, was his reputation so great that two immortal kings wouldn't dare to touch his subordinates? What was going on in the Ghost King city recently? Tang Yuan really wanted to be more unyielding and wanted to explode, but he immediately recalled the scene of Ling Han grabbing his neck, and his entire body instantly felt a chill, causing him to involuntarily shiver. This was a ruthless person. Just like Ape, he looked at Yi Futian without any emotion, as if Yi Futian was just a cold corpse. If they turned hostile now, who here could stop Ling Han? Since Ling Han dared to kill Luo Yang, he had already caused a great disaster. What was the point of killing him now? Moreover, Tang Yuan was actually very interested in Ling Han's suggestion. That was because he was a person who squandered without limit, and had a great need for money. Moreover, the investment he had invested in Ling Han was still far from being recovered, so he was really a little poor at present. It should be Luo Yang's father. If Ling Han could escape from a seventh heavenly immortal king, then he might as well make use of Ling Han. Such a fighter was quite useful. Furthermore, he had yet to avenge Lu Li. Once he had made enough money from Ling Han, he would avenge Lu Li's death, and then kill him. Tang Yuan thought to himself. He indeed had the style of a spoiled brat, but at the same time, he was also very practical. Okay. He nodded, but there was no joy on his face. Everyone was greatly shocked. They had never thought that Tang Yuan would actually compromise. One had to know, when had this lord ever suffered such humiliation? But thinking again, now that Ling Han possessed overwhelming power, how could Tang Yuan possibly fall out with him? Just like before in the arena, when Ape put a sword to his neck, didn't he also chickened out? Actually, this guy was relying on the fact that he had a ninth heavenly immortal king for a father. Apart from that, he was just an ordinary immortal king. But Luo Yang's corpse had not yet turned cold. If he just let it go, Wouldn't it be disappointing? If they followed such a boss, would they be betrayed by him? Tang Yuan wasn't in the mood to care about this. Although he had compromised, he had lost all face. Why would he care about others? He flicked his sleeves and swaggered off. As soon as possible, he would have Ling Han fight Lu Li's King of Blood War. After that, he would constantly have Ling Han fight, squeezing every bit of value out of him. Of course, the prerequisite was that Ling Han could get past Luo Yang's father. Luo Fuming wasn't someone who would swallow humiliation. As expected, before the day had even passed, Luo Fuming arrived. "Greetings, Uncle Luo." Tang Yuan personally went to greet him. Even though he had a high opinion of himself, he still had to show the necessary respect in front of his father's capable generals. Otherwise, if these people were all driven to the subordinates of their competitors, what could a commander without an army do? Luo Fuming nodded, his expression ugly. "Is the evil brat who killed Luo Yang still in your residence?" "Yes," Tang Yuan said. "He killed Luo Yang. Why didn't you tie him up and bring him to my residence?" Luo Fuming asked. There was obvious dissatisfaction in his tone. "Were you still trying to protect this person?" Tang Yuan felt wronged. He actually wanted to kill Ling Han for threatening him. But he didn't want to spend money, and he didn't have the ability to do so. He could only tell the truth. "To tell you the truth, Uncle Luo, that evil brat is very powerful. Now he has turned the tables. Even I can't do anything to him." Oh, Luo Fuming was surprised. He was at home. When his son's body was brought over, he found out who the murderer was and where he was. Then, he rushed over and didn't ask anything else. He paused and thought of many things. Recently, the Ghost King had been stirring. It seemed like there was going to be a change. Could it have something to do with that? Tang Yuan didn't know. He said, "That person is called Li Long. He is the new king of Blood War." Fuck. Luo Fuming's face was filled with anger. His fear was gone. It was just a king of Blood War. And a new one at that. What was there to be afraid of? He immediately said, "I am going to take this person and bring him back to be killed as a sacrifice to Yang. You won't object, right?" "Of course not," said Tang Yuan. He knew that Luo Fuming was his father's capable general. His father would definitely not allow him to betray such a capable general just because of money or personal grudges. Thus, even if Luo Fuming really wanted to kill Ling Han, Tang Yuan wouldn't come forward to plead for him. Furthermore, he really wanted to see Ling Han die in front of him. His neck still seemed to be in pain. Luo Fuming flicked his sleeves and said, "Lead the way." Tang Yuan led the way and arrived at the place where Ling Han was staying. But after looking around, he couldn't find Ling Han's whereabouts at all. "Nephew, where is he?" Luo Fuming asked coldly. Tang Yuan wiped off his cold sweat. He had indeed arranged for Ling Han to stay here. And he had even sent people to keep watch outside. He clearly hadn't seen him leave. "Nephew, are you really not protecting this evil brat?" Luo Fuming asked again. This brat even dared to deceive him? Tang Yuan suddenly had an idea. That fellow must be hiding in a spatial divine item. Luo Fuming spread out his divine sense and began to search everywhere. In just a short while, his divine sense locked onto a small box. Although it was hidden very well, he could still sense a different aura coming from it. This was divine metal. His eyes instantly lit up. It should be known that even he didn't have a celestial artifact. But now, a piece of divine metal was right in front of him. How could he not be tempted? The pain of losing his son was immediately thrown to the back of his mind. That was because he could have another son after his son died. But if he missed out on divine metal, would there be a second chance? Shwa, just at this moment a figure flashed. Ling Han appeared out of thin air. The aura on his body was powerful but unstable. It was more refreshing to read on his phone. Chapter 2582. Ling Han had been studying Bull Tu's horns all this time. After so many days, he naturally had a lot of understanding. This was the accumulation of all the power of the Herculean Iron Bull tribe. From a certain perspective, it was a celestial medicine, or even more powerful than a celestial medicine. Ling Han didn't refine it into an alchemical pill, because he didn't understand the celestial medicine of this world very well, and couldn't use it effectively. Thus, he changed his mind and decided to simply refine the two horns and extract the essence within. After returning to Tang Yuan's side courtyard, he started this work, and because he was afraid of being disturbed, he entered the spatial celestial tool. Previously, he had asked Wally for advice, and he had set up formation patterns on this celestial tool, making it very difficult to discover. And even if it was discovered, the formation patterns would activate, and it would have a considerable defensive effect. No matter what, it was still a celestial tool, just that it couldn't be used for attack, but it could put all its power into defense, which was naturally very awesome. However, Ling Han was only a third heaven celestial king, after all, so Luo Fuming only had to search seriously, and he would soon find the spatial celestial tool. Ling Han used time flow on himself. Less than half a day had passed in the real world, and he had refined the two horns, turning them into a bowl of golden liquid. He now had that unbreakable cauldron, and whether it was refining pills or refining materials, it was very powerful. One portion each. Ling Han filled a small half of the golden liquid for the Empress, and the other half for bewitching Maiden Ro. This was a very nutritious item. Symbols of great Tao rose up from the bowl, and manifested all things in the world. However, only celestial kings had the luck to enjoy this thing. So Lu Yutong and the others didn't have a share. Little Terror also had a share, and it was split evenly between 3 people and 1 beast. Can this really be eaten? Bewitching Maiden Ro asked with a frown. She had seen with her own eyes that this was refined from the horns. Ling Han stretched out a hand. If you don't want it, give it to me. Who said I don't want it? Bewitching Maiden Ro hurriedly picked up the bowl, and even rolled her eyes at Ling Han. This guy was really... She was just acting coquettishly, so why was he so insensitive? The Empress smiled, and drank the golden liquid first. Seeing that its master had drunk it, it stuck out its tongue and licked it. Ling Han also drained his cup in 1 gulp, while Bewitching Maiden Ro drank slowly like a doormat. After eating it, the 3 people and 1 beast immediately began to refine the medicinal power. The energy in the bull's horn was shockingly terrifying. Nyo Air was a stage 4 emperor, while Nyoda was a stage 5 emperor star. Nearly 90% of their energy had been extracted, and even if it was divided into 4 equal portions, it would still be comparable to a top-grade celestial herb. Ling Han originally wanted to continue improving his physique, but although the ox horn was a great supplement, it could not be compared to the energy returning to 1 fruit. It could only improve his cultivation. Therefore, Ling Han had no other choice. His cultivation began to soar. At the Immortal King level, even if one consumed the best immortal medicine every day, it would still take millions of years to break through to the next realm. And after the 7th and 8th heavenly layer, only a limited number of great medicines would be effective. Thus, the rise of Ling Han's cultivation was actually relative. Compared to the advancement of other celestial kings, he could be said to be extremely fast. But if the stage 3 heaven was divided into 10 steps, this would only allow him to take 1 step forward. But Ling Han was already close to the peak stage of the stage 3 heaven, and after taking this step, he had truly touched the ceiling of the stage 4 heaven. It should be known that his evolution index had already reached 12, and there was even a slight possibility of surpassing it. His final point was at least a first step celestial venerable tier. So would there be a bottleneck when breaking through to the stage 4 heaven? With the acceleration of the flow of time, he broke through the barrier of the stage 4 heaven in a mere 11 days. The heavenly tribulation was instantly born. Ling Han naturally could not undergo the tribulation in a spatial celestial tool. Otherwise, under the bombardment of the heavenly tribulation, even divine metal could be shattered. Thus, Ling Han stepped out of the celestial tool. Ling Han immediately discovered that there were currently 2 people standing in front of him. One was Tang Yuan, and the other was a middle-aged man, 7 rays of light entwined around his body. He only thought for a moment, and immediately realized that this was Luo Yang's old man, and had come to seek revenge on him. Come on, damned brat! Luo Fuming's gaze was fierce, and there was even more boundless greed in it. This was because he had noticed that Ling Han had flown out of that piece of divine metal, and he had conveniently collected that piece of divine metal. This was a spatial celestial tool, he immediately determined, and this caused his heart to pound even faster. He was extravagant enough to use divine metal to forge a spatial celestial tool. Just how shocking was this fellow's wealth? In the beginning, the cemetery of immortal kings had indeed imprisoned immortal kings with powerful backgrounds, and it was inconvenient to directly kill them, so they had been thrown here to kill each other. But as time passed, many immortal kings without powerful backgrounds had been thrown in as well. This was because compared to directly killing them, throwing them into the cemetery of immortal kings was a better form of torture. No matter what, this was a prison, and it was also filled with slaughter. Today, there might not be tomorrow, and the pressure was like a mountain. Luo Fuming was the latter. He had no background, and on the contrary, he had offended someone with a powerful background, so he had been thrown into the cemetery of immortal kings. He was certain that a celestial venerable definitely stood behind Ling Han. Otherwise, how could he have been so extravagant as to forge a spatial celestial tool out of divine metal? Die! He attacked, wanting to take Ling Han's life in one move. He didn't care about Ling Han's background. In this place, everyone's life was worthless. Ling Han cracked a smile. Are you sure? Boom! Heaven and earth seemed to respond, and a bolt of lightning struck down. Luo Fuming forcefully retracted his attack. This fellow was actually going to transcend the tribulation. He didn't dare to interfere. The higher one's cultivation level was, the more terrifying the heavenly tribulation would be. This was because the closer one was to the limits of heaven and earth, the more the heaven and earth would target them. Why was a seventh heaven immortal king like him unable to advance to the eighth heaven? On one hand, the great Tao was difficult to grasp, and on the other hand, he was afraid of the heavenly tribulation. The day he succeeded would be the day his Tao would vanish. Fuck, how could there be such a coincidence? It just had to be Ling Han's tribulation. Tang Yuan was also stunned. Ling Han was going to transcend the tribulation. Didn't that mean he was going to become a fourth heaven immortal king? Hiss, this fellow hadn't even obtained a ascending dragon pill. But he had already reached the fourth heaven so easily. He was extremely jealous. He didn't know how many ascending dragon pills he had consumed, but he was still stuck at the second heaven. If these ascending dragon pills were consumed by another second heaven immortal king, that person might have already reached the fourth or fifth heaven. His aptitude was indeed not high, and it could even be said that he was mischievous. It was all thanks to him having a good father. Otherwise, there was no way he could have become an immortal king. In comparison, he was naturally extremely jealous. Ling Han only smiled. These two dared to interfere with his heavenly tribulation? He soared into the sky and faced the immortal king tribulation head-on. Boom! A bolt of lightning struck. It was extremely terrifying. Ling Han suffered a blow and was instantly sent flying diagonally out of the city. He didn't want to fall out with the ninth heaven immortal king for the time being, so he didn't transcend the tribulation in the city. Otherwise, such a great tribulation would probably wipe out all ghost kings. Boom! Boom! Lightning constantly struck, following him like a shadow. This was targeted by the heaven and earth. It was useless no matter where he fled. Swoosh! Luo Fuming followed closely behind. Ignoring the fact that he hated Ling Han for killing his son, just the spatial immortal artifact on Ling Han made it impossible for him to spare Ling Han. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.